I'm going to give this one more second. Oh, it looks like we're
And
finally.
Kasha's here. Hi, Kasha. Kasha Kynes is Epstein-Barr virus and virus expert. So welcome.
Yeah.
Glad you're here, Kasha.
Oh my God. So amazing. So amazing.
And I'm in my, I am dressed. I do have non-pajama pants on.
Well, the last bit before we get going, I'm wondering
than usual, but
I'm wondering about the if anybody's taken the new mullet look serious, because it's kind of like, you know, it's business in the front and party in the back. We've got business up top and party down below in our shorts and stuff. So thanks to everybody for joining us. We're going to get started here with coronavirus Voices of Reason. My name is Dr. Tom Moorcroft. I'm a board certified osteopathic physician specializing in the integrative treatment of chronic bacterial and viral infections, and as well as environmental exposures. And as many of you may know, I specialize and have a special interest in kids with PANDAS and PANS, autoimmune encephalitis. But at this time, I wanted to get together with a group of my friends, and anybody who tuned in the beginning, I was talking with Dr. Elisa Song, who we're going to be chatting with in just a moment. And we all want to get together, not only as physicians and psychologists today, but also for me, I'm a husband and a father, and I'm a person on the same journey as you guys are, who really doesn't know all the answers, but we really want to tell you what the facts are, cut through some of the fiction, and really be right up front with how things are going. And, you know, I have a daughter, she's 10 years old, and her name is Talia. And the other day she said, "Daddy, you know, we all need to remain calm. Because if our brains are going crazy, we can't think rationally or scientifically." And that's really what we want to do today, is give you sort of the information we know, keep it nice and, calming as best we can in this crazy situation, and then tell you what we're doing both as clinicians as well as parents and spouses in our own personal lives to kind of get through this. So that's a part of what we're going to do today. And the other part, I guess, that's important to me is we're also looking at how we have this amazing self-healing mechanism that is our body. And we have experts joining us who understand that what we need to do really is to do two things. One is learn as much about the virus and prevention as we can and how to treat it. But the other one is we're the host. We want to make our bodies so in such good shape that we're a really bad host for that virus. And these are things that we can do today. And we're going to share all our tips and tricks with that. So, and it's interesting, you know, a lot of people understand that the coronavirus is spreading across the planet very quickly. In some cases, it's very severe, but you know, a lot of cases are more mild. And we also know that the people who are the sickest are the people who have the most illnesses. They have 3 or 4 pre-existing illnesses, or maybe 1 or 2. But we know that the folks who do the best tend to be the people who have the least going on in their health. So that's where we really want to address things today. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you who's going to be joining us in a moment, and then I'm going to dive into a quick update on the coronavirus, and then we're going to really dive in with all of our panelists. So the order of our speakers today is going to be a quick update from me on sort of what's going on, and then we're going to talk with Dr. Elisa Song, who's a holistic pediatrician, and we'll tell you more about her in just a moment. Then we're going to dive in with Dr. Terry Walls, who I know many of you know. And then there's a quick change in the schedule. After Terry, we're going to have Joan Rosenberg, and then we'll have Rosanna Kapana-Hodge. And then we're going to dive in with Heather Paulson. And what's really cool, because Elisa had mentioned she saw Kasha is an expert in Epstein-Barr, both acute and chronic treatment. And she's going to jump on at the end to give us a little surprise bonus sesh. So we're going to have a lot of information today. We are scheduled for about 3 hours. We're going to really try to stay on that time. And, you know, we've had such an overwhelming desire for people to attend today that we have thousands of people who are planning to come. So we're not going to get to everybody's question, but we're going to hit on all the big ones as best we can. And we're going to do our best to take all that information, any questions that we haven't got fully answered, and all of us will be doing different things throughout the weeks coming to educate you on those. Another big thing that's, I I want to just let people know is I'm going to try to take a short break right in the middle today. And we're also recording this, and all of you will receive an email that will send you to the replay link. It again will be free. You'll be able to share the link with loved ones and anyone who may not be able to attend today. So hopefully that'll make it accessible to everybody. And if you want to watch a particular person and then you have things to do, you can always come back and watch what everybody else has said at different times. So, you know, and I hope that that'll be out in the next couple of days. So to kick off quickly, you know, there's a lot about this novel coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2, and you know, coronaviruses are really common in animals, but we do see a few coronaviruses that have skipped over to humans. And if we look at the common cold, about a third of common colds are actually caused by 4 coronaviruses that, you know, and the other ones are the other 2/3 are typically rhinoviruses. So what's interesting though is we have had 3 major coronaviruses skip from animals over to people and caused some pretty significant difficulties, including the original SARS-CoV. Then we had the MERS outbreak in the mid, you know, around 2014, 15, and now we've got the COVID-19 and the virus and what we're calling the SARS-CoV-2 virus that's leading to this. And so one of the things I think is really interesting to kind of get the medical nerdiness out of the way for just a moment is it's called the coronavirus because it has spikes on it. And I'm sure we've all seen these pictures. And essentially what you do is you have these spikes that are like this that are held together. And I know with Dr. Song, we're going to be diving into a discussion of, you know, cytokine storm and also the ACE2 receptor, I'm sure will come up. And so, but what's interesting is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the spikes are essentially docking on this ACE receptor, which is a lot of it's in our lungs and in our airways, which is why it's primarily a respiratory infection. But if you compare, a lot of people have asked me, why is it so lethal? Why is it so viral? Why is it spreading so much? And what we see is that that S protein spike that sticks off is actually basically these 2 parts are stuck together. And in order for the virus to activate, they have to open up. And the bond between them is much, much easier to break than the original SARS virus. And so when it docks, there's this enzyme called furin, which helps break that apart and then rapidly lead to the virus getting into our tissues and viral replication. So there's something different and unique about the SARS-CoV-2 virus that leads to COVID-19 that's different than these previous ones, and that's something to think about. As many of you know, there is no vaccine at the moment, but people are working on that. And so hopefully there'll be more to come, and then I'm sure we'll have all the discussions of what to do, vaccinate or not vaccinate. There's a lot of treatments that people have been talking about that I just wanted to kind of let you know that we're all aware of and that we're thinking about. There's a thing called remdesivir, which is an intravenous drug, an antiviral. It stops viral replication. This can be used in the critical care unit in very severely ill people, and it has shown some promise. And so the beauty of what we're finding out is there are over 80 clinical trials across the globe starting to investigate what treatments would be the best, or what would even be effective. And so it's really nice too that we are including traditional Chinese herbs and some other natural products more recently too. So we'll have more information on that. But the initial work in the critical care units has been promising. And I'm sure you've all heard about hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine. These are some antimalarials. And what's really interesting is these are increase the pH, which makes it harder for the SARS-CoV-2. Well, I should say, we believe it makes it harder for the SARS-CoV-2 virus to actually dock in those ACE2 receptors. So it might work preventatively, and there is some work suggesting that it might work if you already are sick. The other thing is people have been combining it with an antibiotic called azithromycin. And one of the reasons for that is probably because with usually I'm used to using actually azithromycin and using the Plaquenil to help the hydroxychloroquine to help it work better. But in this case, we're flipping it around, and the use of the azithromycin seems to improve the antiviral properties of the hydroxychloroquine. Again, it's early on, we're not really sure, but studies are looking at that. And then, along with that, I've seen some people giving out azithromycin just by itself. I'm not sure that that's really the right thing to do, because that's an antibacterial. And unless you have a bacterial pneumonia, which is not what COVID-19 is, it's probably not going to help, and it might actually cause some side effects. So just things to think about. Other quick, and then there are also some biologics like interleukin-6 blockers and a few other medicines that people are looking at. And part of what we'll get into with Dr. Elisa Song, we'll be talking about cytokine storm. The interleukin-6 blockers, as well as this hydroxychloroquine, have very profound anti-inflammatory properties and immune modulating properties, which might be why they show some promise right now. One of the big questions that I was asked to address before we dive in with our guests is, what about immunity? And what we know is that things like influenza, as I'm sure you're all aware of, kind of is a virus that mutates on an annual basis. So even though I got vaccinated this year, the one I'm exposed to next year might be different. We don't really know what's going to happen with the current novel coronavirus. It's just too early to see. But what we do know is that from the beginning of human infection until now with the SARS-CoV-2, there really hasn't been too much genetic change. So it doesn't look like it's mutated this year so far. But the other part is, we also know that there have been a handful of people who have been reinfected. And I use that word cautiously, because reinfection would suggest that you got completely better and then you got sick again with a different infection. And I'm not so sure that we know that, because I'm wondering if it's a relapse of the same infection. So we just don't know enough at this point, and just something to be aware of. So the big things that we can still take away are, we should be washing our hands for 20 seconds with soap and water. And we also, if we don't have access to that, can use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol. Dr. Elisa has an amazing article with 3 different recipes on how to make your own at home if you can't find any, because everybody's bought it up. The other thing is, we've talked a lot about social distancing, and I would love to change the conversation and make that physical distancing, because I actually feel like I'm more socially connected than I've been in a really long time, because we've all been reaching out to each other. And I hope through today, the coronavirus that's going around will actually bring us together more. So maybe we're physically separated to help prevent the spread of the infection, and to kind of level off the spike in the number of people who have it right now. Because as you've heard, the medical system is completely overwhelmed by this. But I would just love to see us continue to come together. I mean, the globe has really opened its arms to each other in an unprecedented way, and just supporting so much. So I'm really hoping we can take that example now and really move forward in the future with it. And then the other piece that we know about preventing spread is, we just don't want to be touching our face, our nose, our mouth with unwashed hands. And the big reason is, the coronavirus is spread primarily through respiratory droplets. So if you think about sneezing or coughing, any of the fluids that come out and cover the table in front of you or your hands, those could potentially transmit the disease. And we also know that if we happen to get those respiratory droplets on copper or zinc, it can be infectious for up to 3 or 4 hours. On cardboard, it can last even up to a day. And on harder plastics and metals, the SARS-CoV-2 virus can actually be viable for 2 or 3 days and infectious. So just wash the high touch surfaces in your home or in your office, and then make sure that before you touch your face, because it's so hard not to do, it's also important to be washing your hands before then. So I just wanted to give everybody a great, just a little background. There's tons of information that we're still going to go through. Any questions, we'll try to hop on that. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce our first guest, my super friend and amazing mom, Dr. Elisa Song. She is a holistic pediatrician, but she's also a mama, and she has 2 amazingly beautiful kids, Bodhi and Kenzie. And, she's a dedicated wife and loving, supporting mother. And, what's really cool about her is she's a Jersey girl and I'm a Jersey guy. And now she's in Northern California. She loves food. She loves wine within, reason. And like me, loves to be a chef and play with her camera. And she founded Holistic Child Wellness in 2005, and it became Whole Family Wellness about 6 years ago. And if you're looking for the latest, greatest pediatric, holistic, integrative care and the best information out there, head over to Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, so that you can help your kids get treated as the unique individual they are and help them to thrive to their fullest potential. So, Dr. Elisa, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Dr. Tom. I'm so excited to be here. And I just wanted to point out there are a couple of people I've noticed saying that the sound's cutting in and out. Yes, Dr. Tom said this will be up as a recording later. And when that recording's up, the Zoom recording will be really, really good quality. Might help if you could somehow land your line. A lot of us don't know how to do that, but that can definitely help. I think because there's so many people on right now, guys. So just, bear with us. It's, there's over 1,000 people listening and watching. So we're going to try to do the best we can. And like Dr. Tom said, there is going to be a replay of this available for whenever you want to listen to it.
Yeah. So, Elisa, I wanted to start off our time together and just ask, what is the most important thing you think people need to know about the coronavirus, about their health, and about their kids?
Yeah. So, one of the things that you said in the beginning, and I'm a pediatrician, so my work is around really helping children thrive, but then that trickles onto, of course, the parents and families. But you mentioned in the introduction that really what we want to do as much as possible is become unfavorable hosts to this virus, right? Because it is estimated that, the majority of us are going to get SARS-CoV-2 at some point, right? We will develop COVID-19. And so, but we do know even still, as we see more and more numbers coming out, that the vast majority still are doing better, have mild symptoms. Children even have, maybe no symptoms at all. And so 80% or more of us have mild symptoms. So what is it, that really helps those of us who have milder symptoms stay relatively well through coronavirus infection? And that's becoming that unfavorable host, right? Really boosting our immune system, and not just our immune system, but all the different ways that we can help support our body and our brain and our mind. And so the first thing I talk to kids about and parents about is really, really during this time where we're in self-quarantine at home, physical distancing as much as possible. Don't use this as an excuse to let, your normal routine go haywire, right? We want to make sure that we are still limiting our sugar. This is not the time when we're stressed and panicked to reach for that pint of ice cream, or reach for the chocolate. Right. Because sugar, I'd say the number one thing you can do to really support yourself during this time is really cut out the sugar, cut out the refined sugar, because studies have shown that sugar within 20 minutes of consumption will reduce our macrophages' ability. So macrophages are the white blood cells that literally come around and find viruses and bacteria to eat up. And so it reduces their ability to eat up viruses like the coronavirus by about 50%. And that effect can last for up to 5 hours. So really important. So then what else do we need to become unfavorable hosts? We want to be rich in antioxidants, because one of the things that we have to remember is when we get sick with any infection, whether it's the influenza virus or whether it's coronavirus, it's not the infection, it's not the virus or the bacteria that makes us feel so crummy and so sick. It's our body's immune response, right? And so these infections, they create a lot of what's called oxidative stress, produce all of these free radicals, and that's what makes us feel so bad, even once the virus itself may have passed. And so what we need are antioxidants to mop up all of those free radicals as quickly as we can. So those free radicals, those antioxidants, where they come, that's where all the colorful fruits and vegetables come in. This morning, the kids and I, we just made a smoothie that was chock full of tons and tons of antioxidants, and not too sweet. We want to have it mostly vegetables as opposed to fruit. And then the other things that I do recommend, that I've been recommending to my patients, and of course, Dr. Tom and I, we can make general comments on how we support our patients, but of course, everyone is unique and individual. So we want to make sure that you're checking in with your doc if you can, to really know what are the best supplements for you. But what I've been putting myself and my children on are extra zinc, which is so important for immune functioning, extra glutathione, which is our master antioxidant. This is one of the reasons why I've had concerns about the French Deputy of Health, the Minister of Health, recommending paracetamol or Tylenol as opposed to ibuprofen. And I have concerns about that on multiple levels. And I wrote an article, on ibuprofen, NSAIDs, and coronavirus. But Tylenol, it depletes glutathione, and that can really inadvertently harm our ability to fight off whatever infection's going on. I think in general, people should be on a good fish oil and a probiotic. Extra vitamin C. Vitamin C is one of our most important antioxidants. Vitamin D and vitamin A. Now, there were questions about whether or not we should be taking extra vitamin D or vitamin A. Now, there are some concerns that have been raised in the functional medicine community about high doses of vitamin D upregulating our ACE2 receptors. And remember, Dr. Tom had said the current, coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, attaches to these ACE2 receptors, and that's sort of how they kind of get into our cells, and especially our lung cells. Now, that being said, on the flip side, we know that optimal vitamin D levels are protective against sepsis. And so we have this sort of, these competing arguments. And while I might not necessarily do a mega high dose of vitamin D when you're sick, with coronavirus, I absolutely think that during this time, we need to optimize our vitamin D levels. And the vast majority of children and adults are vitamin D deficient or insufficient. So I think a dose that will maintain healthy vitamin D levels is really important.
And Elisa, one of the questions too, and I think it would be great to spend a few moments on it, would be this whole ACE thing. I mean, because I know the article you wrote and really details it really well for people. But, this is one of the things I think that it's important for people to understand, is that we don't really know all the answers,
Yes.
And when we look at the research on ibuprofen and on ACE levels, we see conflicting. And even in high blood pressure treatment, whether they use an ACE inhibitor or an ARB, which is another kind of blood pressure lowering medicine, these things in some studies show we increase ACE2 levels, and others it shows no change. And then with increased ACE2 levels, we see some conflicting evidence in our infectious literature, whether it's protective or detrimental. So could you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, and this is where the internet, being able to see all this research for ourselves, really, trying to dive into the science, and this availability, of our social life online and to spread this information has its benefits and also sometimes its problems, because we don't know all the answers. And I do worry about making these sweeping statements that, may end up doing more harm than good. And so, especially when it comes to this novel coronavirus, which up until December, the world has never seen. This is less than 3 months. It was announced that this novel coronavirus was, hitting in Wuhan, China. December 31 is when we had those first reports come out. This is less than 3 months from that time. So we have 3 months of data and research on this new coronavirus. So we can make extrapolations, but around ACE2, Tom's right. There are conflicting data. Now, if you are on a medication, there was a Lancet article that I think is what really fueled this fear, that sort of diabetes medications, maybe ibuprofen, heart, blood pressure medications can increase ACE2 and may be problematic if you have COVID-19. Please don't go off of your medications, right? If you need those medications to manage your health problems, that is more important to manage, and optimize your chronic health concerns than to be off of those meds, because we just don't know. Tom and I, we have a lot of kids with PANS and PANDAS who are on naproxen. That's an NSAID. They need that ibuprofen or that NSAID to manage their neuropsychiatric inflammation. And then there is some data, animal data and human data showing that ACE2, an increase in ACE2, even giving ACE2 can be beneficial in protecting against sepsis and protecting against acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is really, what our patients who are dying of COVID-19 are dying from. So it's just not clear. So again, I would say in this time where we're just not certain, maybe mega doses aren't the right idea, but optimizing what we know, optimizing our vitamin D levels, knowing that most of us are deficient and that is a risk factor for sepsis, I think is a smart idea.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've always been recommending is that we do whatever we can do on our own to
Mhm.
boost this up, because I mean, I think a lot of people are aware that vitamin D is really hard, and that's something that most people need to supplement
Yeah.
unless you're out in the sun all the time. But as an
And we're in the
osteopath,
middle of winter still, right? We're still, I mean, most parts of the country, I'm in California, and it's still pretty cool here. And I know I can't complain because it's not nearly as cold as other places, but most of us are not outside, and the sun is just not strong enough in the spring to really have that optimal vitamin D conversion.
yeah, and there's so many things, and we did have a question from Melinda, which I think goes into this. Has a child with high triglycerides and low vitamin D, and the doc says everything else is good. The triglycerides are probably due to too much sugar. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, and that's where, we can get in all of the supplements we want to, but we have to remember you can't out supplement a non-healthy diet and lifestyle. There's just no way, right? So we really want to focus on as clean a diet as possible without adding more stress, right? If your kids are, sensory, you know, really picky eaters, only eating a handful of foods, don't just do our best, right? We can only as moms do our best. And so we just slowly try to get in a little bit more. But yes, I think, in that case, if I had a patient in my office who had low vitamin D levels or even suboptimal, a value of 22, even though Quest would say 20 to 100 is normal, is not optimal. I mean, I really like to see kids' vitamin D levels. And I think, Tom, you and I have spoken about this, but really around 60 to 80 optimally for immune health. And so, I would like to see those levels up if you were my child. And I think, one of the things that we need to also think about, just in terms of tying in the ACE2 receptors and children. What do we know about children now? Are they really more at risk? And even still, right, there was a report that was published last week in the American Academy of Pediatrics. And you can see it's such a moving target. That showed that perhaps children are a little bit higher risk than we had thought. Because we had thought that the general consensus is still, though, that vast majority of children have a mild illness to maybe no symptoms, right? They're asymptomatic carriers or they have very mild illness. And that is still true, even with the numbers that we saw. And I want to get these numbers to you because what was interesting in the study, and, please, if you can, if your physician or, whomever, whomever's article you choose to read, if they cite resources, and hopefully they cite references, right? Because we want the as much data as we can in these uncertain times. But look at those, because I saw one post, and this is even like, I don't know if it was Newsweek or whatever, New York Times, but a posting that a really scary post to me, reading as a mom, that maybe kids are getting hit a lot harder than we had thought. So then I went to the article, and it's simply not true. This article, when they looked at the numbers, and I want to tell you guys the numbers, they did in China. So they looked at over 2,100 pediatric patients, right? Very large number. So over 2,143 patients. Now, what's really interesting is only about a third had confirmed COVID-19. The rest, right, 66%, two-thirds were suspected. So even then, we don't have completely accurate data, but 94%, right? 94% of those kids who are infected or suspected to be infected had 0 to just moderate symptoms. So please, as moms, we still want to remember that. And there were no deaths in children who were under, 14. There was one death in this series of a child who was 14.
Right.
So,
And
mhm.
oh, I was just going to say, I noticed in the United States data that came out that said the millennial age group might be more at risk than they thought. We still have no reported death of a
Yeah,
child under 19 in the US.
in the US,
There's,
that's right.
I've heard some crazy discussions of things, and like including why kids are maybe less susceptible to
Yeah,
COVID-19. And some of the things, like I talk a lot about sleep as a really critical immune booster and
yep,
keeping on your cycle, your sleep cycle as part of your health. And one of the things I had heard is some people were saying maybe it's children's natural higher levels of melatonin that may be playing a role. It could be their immune function. And so I thought I had no one better to verify all this with than you. So I'm putting you
Yeah,
on the spot.
I think that that definitely is an interesting point. I mean, I've also read that perhaps, everything about children's immune functioning is less mature in a way. And so even their ACE2 receptors in their lungs, they have fewer receptors, and also, the functioning of those receptors isn't as mature. So perhaps then the SARS, CoV-2 virus is just not able to bind as efficiently to their lung cells. So maybe the sleep thing is really interesting, and Dr. Tom and I, we love talking about the cell danger response, and and I truly think, in some of my more recent interviews, I've really been trying to impart to parents that we have in this moment, as scary as it is, we have this opportunity in changing our lifestyles, really looking at how we're living, to build even more, not just emotional resilience for our kids, but cellular resilience. And that really, one of the foundations for really promoting remaining in the health cycle. If we're sick, moving through the 3 stages of the cell danger response back to the health cycle is sleep, right? Sleep is really key. And if you're a mom or a dad, right, your kids, you prioritize, most of us prioritize our kids' sleep at the expense of our sleep, right? Because I know for me, I mean, this past 2 weeks have been crazy, as they have been for all of us. Not just figuring out, if you're not a homeschooling parent, trying to manage that, in addition to, working from home, figuring out a schedule. And my sleep, as much as I, love to practice what I preach, my sleep has gone to the wayside. And so last night I just crashed. I mean, we were trying to have a family movie night, and at 8 o'clock, I fell asleep on the couch. The kids woke me up. They're like, are you okay? You want to go to bed? I'm like, no, I'm okay. And then 8:30 again, I fell asleep, and they're like, you need to go to bed. So I literally, I crashed in bed 8:30 last night. I did not get up until 8 o'clock this morning. I mean, my body needed it
Wow.
that badly, right? So, I mean, don't do what I do, right? But I think Tom's right. I mean, there is some evidence that melatonin is protective. I mean, against COVID-19, but also just in terms of our brain health and our longevity. And, on the other end of the spectrum for our elderly, who with declining brain function. So we can't underscore the importance of sleep.
Yeah, and I think that you just really put it's just so impressive, important, is that we will get through this,
Mhm.
and the things that we're doing today are going to make such a big difference in our long-term health. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like how we address today is going to make a big difference in moving forward in the future. We have so many awesome questions, but I know that there were some specific questions in the beginning, Elisa, for you in terms of like elderberry, echinacea, and other immune stimulants and
Mhm.
cytokine storm. So I figured before we get too much further down
Yeah.
the realm, and
Um,
figured,
what I definitely want to address that. I just want to specifically, I saw a question coming up about if a nursing mother were to get COVID-19, and I'm actually pulling together a paper on what this means for pregnant women who may be delivering in the hospital, in the next couple months, and how we can protect ourselves. But, for nursing mothers, one question was, do we know if COVID-19 antibodies can pass through the breast milk and protect the baby? There's no reason not to think that, right? I mean, breast milk is so amazing for the baby. It's the, perfect immune support and nutritional support and brain support for your baby. And we know that antibodies pass through the breast milk. With that, we know, I mean, I know from my practice, when I have families who there's a nursing baby and everyone has influenza, usually that baby does the best if they're nursing, right? And so
right.
absolutely, I would think that would be completely protective. Now, one thing though, there was a study, very, very small study. It really only looked at 9 pregnant women who delivered in China, but none of those women, and they all had COVID-19. None of them had poor outcomes. So they did find pregnant women, at least it doesn't seem from what I'm reading, do not appear to really have significantly increased risk. I know for influenza that's not the case, but and then also they did test breast milk, cord blood, and there's one, I'm missing one thing. They tested 3 different body fluids of the mom for the novel coronavirus, and it was not present. Okay, so it's not, you're not, if you have COVID-19, it does not look like you would pass it through the breast milk. I mean, of course, through your respiratory droplets. I mean, that's another story.
Right.
But,
And when I saw that, Elisa, one of the studies, there were 2 children out of China who were shown to get COVID-19 when they're in the first month of life, but both of them were after birth,
yeah.
were fine. Then they were exposed to adults who were very symptomatic, and both kids did fine. So I think that
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Yep. Yep. Now, cytokine storm, because that's a huge question. One thing that we know, remember when Dr. Tom and I were talking in the beginning about, it's not really the infection itself, it's our immune response that makes us recover in an appropriate way or not, right? And then go on to develop what's called, cytokine storm is everywhere in the news, right? Sepsis, acute respiratory distress syndrome. And when we think about inflammation, the first thing that's really important to remember is that inflammation is not a bad word just by itself, right? Inflammation, when our body mounts a fever against an infection, that's inflammation. And that actually helps us fight the infection. We also have these mechanisms in our immune system to balance that pro-inflammation, right? That pro-inflammatory response. Then we have that regulatory or modulating response that says, hey, inflammation, you've done your job. Now the modulating regulatory part of our immune system says, okay, now you can go back down, right? It's when this regulatory modulating part doesn't go up enough, doesn't bring inflammation down, the inflammation can go up and up and up and kind of go unchecked. And that's when we can get this I guess you would call it kind of like a volcano of inflammatory cytokines that create unchecked inflammation. So it's unchecked and chronic inflammation that are the problem. Now, with cytokine storm, there's a ton of questions about elderberry. And as I was mentioning in the beginning, I'm working on an elderberry post because I want people to have the right information, because I know many of you, especially if you've been following my recommendations and you're a patient of mine, we do use elderberry prophylactically and for treatment during the flu season. So one of the concerns, one of the trials that's going on is with, in the States, it's with, I'm going to get the name of the medication. Of course, I can't find it right now. Oh, tocilizumab, right? That's a IL-6 antibody blocker, right? A monoclonal antibody. Sarilumab is being studied in China. So these are antibodies that block the IL-6 pathway. They block and inhibit binding to the IL-6. Interleukin-6 is an inflammatory cytokine, and the IL-6 receptor. So there is some thought that IL-6 may play a role in patients who develop acute respiratory distress syndrome when they have COVID-19. Elderberry, so this is where the reports, right? Elderberry has been shown in vitro to increase IL-6 levels, interleukin-6 levels. So is that a bad thing? It's hard to say, because we also know that elderberry creates not just these inflammatory cytokines to help our immune response fight infections, but also anti-inflammatory cytokines to balance. Whether or not we should stop elderberry, I don't know. Right now, what it looks to me, okay, and please, I'm going to be getting this article out in the next few days, but what it looks like to me is that for prevention, right, a healthy immune response, healthy levels of kind of anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory cytokines, elderberry should be okay. It should be okay, using as more of a preventive. But once you get sick, because we just don't know yet, I probably would hold off on the elderberry. Right. Same thing with echinacea, just to be on the purely cautious side. Now, that being said, there have been zero case reports of patients actually developing cytokine storm when they're on elderberry. So
I think it's important, Elisa, to point out that, cytokine storm is like a near-death experience in the hospital, right? These are people who are extremely ill. They're probably not even going to have access to herbs unless their family is going to sneak them into the hospital. This is not 80 to 90 to 95% of the population. We're comparing things that don't make sense to compare unless we have a study, right? Because, boosting up your immune system, sleep does that. Going out in the sunshine does that. Exercise does that. Laughing and gratitude does that. meditation, prayer, reading does that.
Mhm.
It's not, I mean, it doesn't send us into a death spiral. And the other part is our body is so smart, right? Our body
Yes.
really is in a place where it wants to be as healthy as possible. So I, I think everything you said is completely dead on. We just don't know. And so we should use some caution. But I also think that we're kind of connecting, critical care medicine with, herbal prevention medicine at home, which are just things that haven't really been studied so well. So just
Yeah.
to keep it in mind,
The
Um,
other thing that you just mentioned, right, the laughing and the, exercise and, and I love that you really point out that we need to shift our language from social distancing to physical distancing because community, we know how important community is to reduce our inflammation, right? To improve health outcomes. And what one thing that does worry me in these next couple of weeks even, right, next month, as we start seeing more shortages of beds, of ICU beds, of ventilators. If we can do our best to slow things down, but that's where, we really want to take that collective community breath and really send out our love and our gratitude to everyone who's out there doing this work because they've shown that gratitude, right, alone, it can really, really help us our own inflammation, right? Our own body's response to what's going on. And so we just want to really make sure that we take time every day, even when we're feeling panicked, to be with our kids and practice our belly breathing, practice, just laugh, find something to laugh that's hilarious every day. Right? Say a loving kindness meditation together. And this is where I start every morning with a 5-minute breathing meditation, but I've also incorporated at the end a 4-sentence loving kindness gratitude that, if you did that every day, I think we could really have this collective way to help children out of this, help ourselves out of this without creating what's called an adverse childhood event, a really severe adverse childhood event for our kids, which then we know has implications for their long-term health.
right. So, so much great information. One of the questions we have is about glutathione and absorbability, because you
Ah,
had mentioned that in kids, but also there's a lot of questions about dosing. And the thing I'll say about we're hearing comments about Buhner protocol and Dr. Klinghart's protocol. There's all kinds of things. Nothing has been studied in COVID-19
yeah,
very well.
yeah,
We're looking at previous research on other viruses, and sometimes, but not often, looking at about what happened with the previous coronavirus epidemics with MERS and SARS. So if you could, Elisa, just tell us a little bit about your thoughts on glutathione. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you have a resource that tells us a little bit more about some of the dosages and the vitamins that we might want to use or not use. So if you can let
yeah.
everybody
So,
know.
I mean, as I mentioned, I think glutathione is so critical for proper immune response when we have a viral infection. And again, as Dr. Tom said, we don't have the data right now, especially for right dosages. But in terms of absorbability, I do use liposomal glutathione. Right, you can use a precursor, N-acetylcysteine or NAC. So that's also an option. That will get converted to glutathione. And please don't forget about Epsom salt baths because Epsom salts, Epsom salts are magnesium sulfate, and that sulfate really helps to enhance glutathione, our own glutathione production without having to take a supplement. And I know Dr. Terry Walls, is going to be on next, and her whole diet, get in those 9 servings, and I'm going to let her talk about that. But one of those is the cruciferous vegetables or sulfur vegetables to enhance glutathione production. So really key. There is a study on that article that I posted. I did link to an article showing in my ibuprofen and coronavirus article showing that giving Tylenol, acetaminophen, during certain viral illnesses can actually prolong the duration of that illness and prolong how the time of shedding, viral shedding from your nose. And one of the reasons is because acetaminophen, Tylenol, or paracetamol, if you're in other parts of the world, deplete our glutathione levels. So I really can't underscore enough how important I think glutathione is.
Right. And
Oh,
so,
and as far as dosages, I've been a little hesitant to, you know, um, write all of my recommended dosages, but I know that people want that and need that. So I was telling Peter, my husband, I'm working on that. As soon as we're done with this panel, I'm working on that to get it out, right? Because it's as much for me and my kids. I want to share with people what supplements I'm giving to myself and to my kids, and also, recommending to my patients so that people can have, if they don't have an integrated pediatrician near
Right.
you.
Great. And thank you so much. I mean, one of the things that we are going to do, there's a bunch of questions about like some of our morning gratitude routines, about the resources we have, and about the replay. And certainly we will be sending you all a link to the replay. And what I'll do is, from everyone who's on the panel today, I'll collect their websites so that you'll be able to and share them with you so that you have access, because everything that Elisa does is so well researched. Her blog posts are incredible. And so we'll make sure that you have one click. You can just go over to her website and get all of that information. And we'll do the same for everybody else. Any closing words there, Elisa, before because I see Terry's on with us and she's raring to
Terry's
go.
on. Hi, Terry. So I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. And so I will close with the gratitude, the 4-sentence gratitude, because I have gratitude for Dr. Tom for putting this on. I have gratitude for all of the panelists who are taking their Sunday afternoon to share their wisdom with us. I have gratitude for all of you for really being so proactive in your and your family's health. And please have gratitude for yourselves too during this time. We need to focus gratitude and loving kindness for ourselves. So those 4 simple sentences: may you feel safe, may you feel happy, may you feel healthy, may you live with ease. And I practice that loving kindness to myself, to my family, to my friends, to my wider community, to all of those in the front lines, helping our sick patients, and to the world, because this will be our opportunity to be a worldwide community for the good of all. So thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and thanks so much for taking your time. And I know we'll be doing a little more of this for everybody, and certainly if there's a need, maybe we can corral you into another one. But you're always so generous with helping, and so all the best to you and your family. And thanks again for making the time today.
Oh, thank you. All right, bye. I look forward to hearing everyone else.
All right, and then Terry, it looks like.
Hey.
All right, I think I just sent you oh yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Let's see. I don't see you on my screen. Other people can. There you go.
Okay, good. Whew.
Gotcha. Good afternoon. So everybody, as I'm sure a lot of you know, this is Terry Wahls. And I have this nice long bio about you, about how amazing you are and how you've just told secondary progressive multiple sclerosis what it can do, which is not take over your life. But, and there's some amazing information about you from going from the wheelchair to now being able to ride your bike every day. But the thing I want to share is, I never knew how important food was in your life and the power to heal. And I started to learn a little bit in medical school because of my own personal struggles. Unfortunately, not because of medical school, but because of personal research. But when I really started to get into trying to prescribe diets to other people so that they could have a safe and effective protocol to follow at home, the first resource I found that really inspired me and made a difference in my life and other people's life was the Wahls protocol. And it really just, when we ran into each other, I was like almost starstruck. I'm like, this is Terry Wahls. So thank you so much for joining us and introducing us to the healing power of foods to the world. And I'm also always motivated by how you demand that we take responsibility for our own health. And that's so important. So if you could tell us maybe what the most important things are for you.
Well, I need people to understand that the food we eat either makes it possible for ourselves to do the chemistry of life, or they make it progressively more difficult. And so I teach people, and I did that for years, decades really, at the VA, to steadily improve their nutrition. And we're able to get people living on food stamps, shopping in small rural towns in Iowa to make these really big changes and have dramatic improvements and transformations of their lives. So that, that's really the biggest message I have for everyone here, that getting control of your food choices so that you're ditching the sugar, ditching the processed foods, and learning how to cook at home. And my goal for you is for all the men on the call and all the tall ladies, 6 foot or taller, should be doing 9 cups of vegetables. A big plate full of greens, another plate full of cabbage, onion, mushroom family vegetables, and then a plate full of colorful things like beets, carrots, berries. Now, when I mean plate, I mean a plate so you can't see the bottom, heaped up all the way, so it's piled high. Then that's 3 cups, and it's possible, particularly if you take out the white flour, the sugar. And if you're a meat eater, you'll need to have a proportionate amount of meat. If you're not a meat eater, then you can have gluten-free grains and legumes.
It's so wonderful, Terry. Like, it just goes back to, for me, not only supporting, taking personal responsibility, which I actually, when I learned about that, it just felt so good to feel empowered, because as we spoke earlier, we have a virus that's coming after us, or at least some people. And then we have a host, which is us. And can you talk about what the vegetables actually do and why we need to be eating this way? Oh, it looks to me like Terry's frozen. I'm not sure if you're hearing her or me right now, but hopefully we'll get this internet connection thing squared away there, Terry. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I hear that we're not hearing Terry at the moment. Are you back?
Well, I'm trying. I'm talking, but you're not hearing me.
I am now.
You are.
And others are
good.
hearing you. Thanks for the feedback, everyone.
Okay. So we'll sort of go back through. You need a lot of vitamin C, and that you're going to get that from the greens. They'll also give you a lot of magnesium, which will be really helpful, again, to reduce that oxidative stress. You'll also want to have plenty of zinc, plenty of retinol or pre-made vitamin A. And for that, I'd like to have people have liver once a week. 6 to 8 ounces, oysters, mussels, clams. You get easily absorbed zinc, easily absorbed magnesium, and a little bit of copper. You'll need all of those nutrients to really have your immune cells do really, really well. I'd also like to have a little bit of iodine, because iodine will be very helpful in your lysosomes, killing bacteria and viruses. As long as you don't have underlying thyroid disease, you could begin taking a kelp capsule a couple times a week, just to be sure that you're not iodine depleted. The next thing that I want you to have a lot of is sauerkraut or kimchi for those probiotics, because those probiotics in the fermented foods will speak to your immune cells in your gut, the gut-associated lymphocytes. And again, that helps modulate your immune cells, so you have the regulatory immune cells that will calm down your cells that are putting out the inflammatory cytokines when it's time, when the infection has been controlled. We need to have a mechanism to turn off that inflammation, and that is through our T regulatory cells. Your sauerkraut and kimchi would be really very helpful.
Now, what are the tricks? What are the tricks for those of us who don't eat this way usually, or our kids? I mean, do you have ways you enjoy getting it in?
So let's start with the greens. And I did this with all of our vets as well. We had food demonstrations. So if you're a meat eater, fry up some bacon, get it to the desired level of doneness, take the bacon out of the skillet, chop it up, put your chopped greens into the skillet, stir them until they're wilted. And so if it's kale, that might be 2 minutes. If it's spinach, it's 30 seconds. Add the chopped bacon back. If it still feels a little bit bitter, add some vinegar, balsamic vinegar or apple cider vinegar. That'll lower the pH and that will get rid of the bitterness. And I'll tell you, my children and their high school age friends thought bacon and greens was their favorite vegetable. In fact, our veterans, our cantankerous old veterans who were horrified when I told them the goal was 9 cups of vegetables, they would be like, "Is that a week or a month?" Said, no, that's a day. And then we'd serve them up the bacon and greens, and they realized, like, wow, that really is quite delicious. The reason our vegetables taste badly is that when we went low fat, then the bitterness of the vegetables became much more apparent. If you add the fat back, so if your cholesterol is acceptable, and it's less than 250, I think bacon fat or clarified butter is fine. If you're worried about your cholesterol, just pour in olive oil afterwards, and then add either apple cider vinegar or citrus or lime or lemon, and that will bring the pH down, get rid of that bitterness.
Yeah, and Terry, one of the things that I find is that interesting is that when we started to go low fat, we found diabetes and obesity rates went through the
Surged.
ceiling.
Oh yeah, it surged because the food taste was bitter. It was difficult to consume. We compensated by adding sugar.
Right.
Yeah, and so our vegetable intake plummeted. Now the average intake of vegetables is 1.5 cups a day.
Wow.
Pardon me, 1.5 servings a day. So it's like 3/4 of a cup.
So Terry, we have a couple questions, and these are just like super amazing ones in my mind, and
good.
and they're kind of all together. And everybody loves your recipes, by the way. I'm looking at all the comments, and
good.
I agree. Beef kale skillet sounds really good too. One of the questions, I'm going to rattle off a few things, and you can go for it. But in this time, like at in my area, I can actually get more fresh vegetables than dried or frozen or canned, but other people are finding the opposite. So what if you can't get fresh veggies? And then can you comment on lard, which I love? Yeah. And so, then the last part to throw in the mix, because I know you're just going to riff on this whole thing, is if I can't do things like the liver or the muscles for whatever reason, taste or allergy, what kind of things can you add in?
Yeah. Okay. So that will be really simple. So if you can't do any organ meat, I would do one of the organ meat capsule supplements, and we have that on my shop page. So I know a lot of folks just get Paleo Valley organ meat capsules, and we'll have 2 to 3 of those every day. That is fine. Okay. And so we'll be sure that you guys have that with all of that. Now, lard. So saturated fats are heat stable. So you can cook with lard. You could cook with beef tallow, duck fat. We had duck last night. And of course, that just makes amazing greens. So we had garlic and kale last night with the duck. And it's just so delicious. If you're increasing your saturated fat intake, I would just get a fasted lipid. And you can see if your cholesterol's 250 or less, I'm fine with it. If it's over 300, then I'm going to have you reduce your saturated fat and use more olive oil. If there are clinical reasons that I'm more concerned because you've had a heart attack or you have diabetes, then yes, I'll want your cholesterol to be lower than 250. The reason I prefer that higher cholesterol is that our membranes have cholesterol in them. Our myelin has cholesterol in them. We need cholesterol to make vitamin D, to make testosterone, which I'm sure you're very fond of, Tom, and estrogen, which I'm very fond of. And our brains like to have our sex hormones. So it's really important for us to have sufficient cholesterol to make those hormones, to make our membranes, and to make myelin. So I prefer to have a cholesterol between 200 and 250 is sort of the sweet spot from
And
my
what if we're a vegetarian or a vegan? I mean, do you have your preferred tricks for getting in the plant-based fats?
Well, so if you're going to have plant-based fats, so having more avocados, you're going to have, whether you're a vegetarian or vegan, you need omega-3, omega-6 fats. If you get the vegetarian omega-3 fats, we can only convert about 5% if you're male or not pregnant. If you get pregnant, you can convert about 10% of the vegetarian source omega-3 fats to the source of omega-3 fat that our brain needs, the DHA and EPA. So that means if you want to have, 2 grams of DHA every day, now you need about 20 grams of alpha linoleic acid,
Linoleic acid.
or the vegetarian omega-3 fatty acid. So when people say flax has 10 times as much omega-3 as salmon, well, it's 20 times less potent. So, so yes, you can do this as a vegetarian or a vegan. You have to be much more thoughtful. I certainly want you to have plenty of B12, check your homocysteine, have a much higher intake of omega-3s.
So
And I saw people asking about some of these oils. So canola oil, I would not use. I'd much rather use olive oil cold, flax oil, hemp oil, walnut oil cold. And I personally like to take these omega-3 oils or olive oil, blend them with garlic or with some fresh green herb, and then use them cold as a sauce over everything that I'm eating, vegetables, meats, salad. And another comment I want to have for folks is I'm getting increasingly uneasy eating raw foods. I would much rather have my greens cooked than a raw salad. Those beautiful berries, unless they're from my yard, I'm afraid of having them. So I feel much more comfortable about things being cooked.
yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely washing our veggies a lot more these days. We have a couple questions. One quick one is, how many cups of veggies for kids or smaller women? Because you mentioned women 6
Oh,
feet and
yeah.
older. I mean, and
So,
taller.
It might have been great to have Alyssa give us her take on that. I think for kids, you could probably imagine a quarter of the meal should be their protein, and 3/4 of the meal should be non-starchy vegetables. If the child is very skinny, more fruits okay, but I'd focus on deeply pigmented fruits. Pears, bananas, apples are more starchy. And so I'd much rather focus on non-starchy vegetables, beets, carrots that are cooked, frankly.
Right.
And
So why do you say that? Because I see I have my opinion about the cooked part, and some people are asking why you're saying, do you want it cooked? Is it COVID-19 specific
COVID-19,
or?
COVID-19. Yeah, I'm just worried because we're trying to slow the transmission of this disease. I think we're all going to get it. So, probably 70 to 90% of us are going to get it. And so my public service is to slow down the transmission. So that's why we're doing the physical distancing, cooking our food. Now, so I have the least likelihood of having severe disease. That's where I'm going to maximize my nutrition, have my organ meat, have a lot of vitamin C, have a lot of sauerkraut, be sure that I have enough fiber in my diet, that I'm having, we talked about rocks, logs, snakes, pudding in tea yet? So
Not
that,
today.
well, every time you have a bowel movement, you want to look in the toilet and see, are we passing rocks, logs, snakes, pudding, or tea? If it's rocks or dry logs, you need more sauerkraut, more kimchi, more fermented foods, more resistant starch like green banana flour, inulin. If you're passing pudding or tea, you've got too much fiber, too much inflammation, and you have to have more bone broth and fewer raw starchy vegetables.
Awesome. So one of the questions, I mean, I'm summing some of the questions up, but a lot of people are like, how do we specifically boost our immunity with COVID-19, which I think is kind of,
Oh, sure.
but
So,
specifically, what about people why are the older population sicker, and what can they particularly do or more at risk, and what
yeah.
can they do?
So people at risk over 60, people on immune suppressing drugs, people with lung disease, smokers, diabetes, high blood, heart disease, severe obesity. So what we can do right now is to clean up our diet, get rid of the sugar, get rid of the processed food, eat vegetables. I would also have garlic every day. And I would have sauerkraut every day. So we have a huge, actually, and I am having a whole head of garlic every day because we're roasting it. And I'm making sure that we're ramping all of that up, particularly since my wife is being reassigned in the hospital to the COVID clinic.
Oh my gosh.
So
Striking,
we are
hitting right at home, huh?
hitting right at home. Garlic, incredibly helpful. I think oregano essential oils may also be helpful. Fermented foods, particularly sauerkraut, kimchi, that would be very helpful. I've got a big, when people are trying to figure out what to buy that you can have for long term, we've gone out, have gotten many heads of cabbage. I've got 4 quarts of sauerkraut fermenting right now. And when those are done in another 5 days, I'll put them in the refrigerator, and I'll go back to the store, get another 4 heads, and ferment another 4 heads of cabbage to keep all of that going. And I'll have this great food, good source of vitamin C, good source of sulfur that will help me with detox, help me with my glutathione. And so I'll be provisioned for several months if we end up having some concerns about food supply access.
Right. And, and part of this is, I think there's been a lot of questions about the supplements and still about IV vitamin C and all this, but I think what I hear you saying, and I totally agree, is these are great if you need them as an adjunctive, but the most important thing is you can boost your immune system. You can get your body working at its highest level by what you put in your mouth.
Oh, absolutely. What we want to do is, because we're all going to get this virus, it's our daily choices with the food we eat, our self-cares in terms of our gratitude, our stress level, our exercise, our sunshine, our sleep, that are going to have the largest impact of, is my disease going to be severe? Will I be able to turn off my inflammatory response at the right time? That's a diet and lifestyle thing. And so for the public good, I want everyone to wash their hands and be physically removed from one another. For the personal good and the family good, I want you to do self-cares, because that's going to determine, am I at high risk to lose control of my health and get ARDS and need ventilators and ICU care? Or am I going to have this be a relatively mild disease that maybe I have a little achiness, a little headache, I never really get a fever, it's no big deal, and it just passes through my family.
So Terry, why do you feel that it's 70 to 90% of us are going to get this?
Well, that's certainly what I'm hearing from the epidemiologist and the virologist here as I'm looking at the national discussion. It's certainly what I heard from the virology researcher that I know here at the University of Iowa.
Yeah, I feel the same way too, because if you think about it, this is Sunday, and last Friday, so 2 Fridays ago, we had 1,600 cases. We now have over almost 20,000 cases, and we haven't even started testing at an appropriate level, and I've seen numbers at least 60%, but we'll see.
Could I talk a little bit about the evolutionary biology perspective on this?
I would love you to.
Okay, so microbes have random mutations, and they do that with every division. They evolve very rapidly, and eventually some of these random mutations will make them more virulent against us. And ever since we've had recorded history, we have episodes of pandemics where huge swaths of the population succumb. But fortunately, we have random mutations that make our immune system more effective in dealing with these viral infections and bacterial infections. We'll always have this escalating arms race between the microbes that infect us and our ability to counteract and respond to this. So we can wait for biology to catch up, and we will, and we'll sort out, biology will sort out which genetic variants in humans respond well to this virus. And we can also make our diet and lifestyle a better match for how our DNA evolved. That's why I'm so keen on vegetables, on sunshine, on meditation, on life's purpose, on sleeping. That's what our biology expects.
Yeah. And we had a comment from Janet about, being in the 70 with diabetes, but in control with no meds, it looks like. And so what's the point really of people who are at super high risk of doing anything at this point? And I think from my perspective, your story points out that you might look,
Yes.
the reason everybody's high risk is because they're eating crap and they're smoking. If you look at Italy, something like 48% of the people who have died, which is super unfortunate, but they had 3 or more medical illnesses.
Mhm.
And the less you had and the better you took care of yourself, the less mortality you had. So,
right. So improve your nutrition, lower that blood sugar by ditching the processed foods. That will have a very nice impact immediately. Improving your sleep. If all you do is get rid of the sugar and the processed foods and begin cooking at home using meats and vegetables, that is a phenomenal big step. And besides, I think what I'm trying to convey to everyone is we can't rely on the ICUs and the ventilators. We're going to have a limited supply. We need to do everything we can to not need the ICU, to not need the hospital, not need the ventilator. And what you have to work with are the foods you choose to eat and your sleep pattern and your expression of gratitude. This is stressful time. We're all sort of anxious, but I'm very intentionally reminding my family, like, I am so grateful that I'm walking.
oh my
I'm
gosh,
so
right?
I'm so grateful that my face pain is controlled. I don't have face pain unless I get accidentally glutened. And and I'm so grateful that my daughter did her year in Italy in 2016 as opposed to 2020. So
Right.
however difficult our circumstances are, if you're alive, there are probably aspects of your life for which you can still have immense gratitude.
And I think what we all want you to know and learn today, and I think, Terry, your work and your personal story points it out better than almost anybody I know, is you have the power to ignite self-healing in yourself. You can optimize your body whatever you've been dealt in your life, you have the power to take some control of that and improve where you're at today. And it looks like, I don't know, Terry, it looks to me like you might have been frozen for a second here, but hopefully you'll jump back with us in a second
I'm back.
here. Oh, there you go.
I'm back.
Hey.
And people may forget that I was so weak I could not sit up. I had ischemic brain fog. I had profound fatigue, and I had trigeminal neuritis, these intense lines across my and jaw. And I began doing all this stuff, no hope for recovery. But instead, I totally unexpected recovered. I now bike to work, travel the world, and teach other clinicians and other patients how they can use diet and lifestyle and potentially have this radical, unexpected return of function in their lives.
Yeah. So one last question here, and then I'll let you have the final word because you're so inspiring. And I just like with Elisa, Terry, we could talk all day about this, and we'll have to do this again soon. Someone asked a question about speaking about fasting and its effects on the immune system. And I love talking about fasting, but I've never actually asked you about it. So I'm wondering what your opinion is.
So I think fasting is hormesis, intermittent mild stress followed by a rest and recovery period. And so I think that is really good. However, you want to be sure that this is very mild. I don't want to give anyone a severe stress or even a moderate stress. Some of the folks I was talking with, a physician in Italy, who I now speak with weekly, who told me that a young person who did a marathon 2 days later was in the ICU on a ventilator with COVID.
Oh my goodness.
And so we were discussing that, this severe stress, hormetic stress, may be a really terrible thing now. So intermittent mild stress, I think, is really good. Time restricted feeding, 12 hours, 14 hours, I think that would be good. This is not the time for a periodic fast.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that's I think really important to talk about with hormesis is a mild to moderate stress over a short duration of time. But if you look up hormesis and you look at some of the images that come up when you Google it, you'll see that if that duration or the intensity of that stressor gets too far, the same stressor turns into a toxin. And with
very damaging.
the time restricted eating, like the intermittent fasting, even a couple times a week, getting a little bit of mild hunger is good because it kicks on a cascade that not only promotes healing and longevity, but it kicks on a process called autophagy, which is our natural way of our cells recycling bad cells that are no longer good for us. But it's also a great way of getting at intracellular pathogens. And so naturally we're boosting immune function. But I agree with you 100%, Terry. It shouldn't be severe at this point. Very mild.
Mild is good. Gentle, moderate is probably okay. Moderate and severe is probably risky, quite risky.
Right.
And severe is definitely risky.
Not the time for it right now. Terry, thank you so much. This has been so incredible. Are there any sort of closing things that we haven't talked about that you really want to make sure people are aware of?
The one other strategy that we're doing is I do forced laughter. So I'll set my phone for 20 seconds. I just laugh, ho, 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 ha, 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 really loudly. That also helps reset your cytokines in some great ways. And again, that's very helpful, even if you don't feel like you're laughing at all inside.
Yeah, such great wisdom. Again, Terry Wahls, so inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us. Certainly, we've got a bazillion questions that we can't get to all of them. Check out Dr. Wahls, her website. I think someone posted your website and your recipes. Certainly, again, I'll be making sure we send any resources to direct everybody over to Dr. Wahls if you don't know where to find her. And again, thank you. So much gratitude for you being here and serving the globe like this and inspiring people, not only in this coronavirus epidemic, but also you're inspiring everyone to actually get back to eating properly and living their life to its fullest.
Thank you much.
All right. Thanks so much, Terry. And everyone, thank you so much. This is just so absolutely incredible at this point. And we're going to have our friend Joan Rosenberg join us now. And hopefully we can get her live here in just a second.
I am
Joan.
here, Tom.
Hi, Joan. Oh, there's Joan.
I'm here. Been waiting. Been listening.
I see that. Thank you so much for joining us and listening. And guys, Joan Rosenberg is a PhD. She is the creator of Emotional Mastery and the Emotional Mastery Training. And like Terry, I have a bio that's a mile long for her. But more importantly, she's an author of one of the most amazing resources I have ever seen. It's called 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. I've seen Joan work. She's helped me personally, and her take on dealing with unpleasant emotions is just absolutely spectacular. And as both Elisa and Terry mentioned, it's so important that, oh good, my video is off, Camper said.
There we go.
Sorry
Yeah,
about that, guys. Anyway, her approach to dealing with unpleasant emotions and in a situation like this so that we can gain confidence and we can improve just our overall health and boost our immune system is incredible. So Joan, thanks so much for joining us. And what's the most important thing right now to you that we need to know? Where do we start this discussion?
Well, first I want to say thank you for including me, and even more, thank you for creating a panel that so many people can benefit from. So I just want to honor you for the service that you're doing for everybody as a starting point. You bet. And this will probably feed in. My thank you to you will also feed in later to probably some suggestions I'll make. But the one thing that I would say that's super important for people to understand right now is not to let their outside circumstances rule their minds. And what becomes very important is that we're in charge of what we're thinking about, and we're in charge of monitoring how we're feeling, and that becomes super important, as opposed to putting all our attention to the outside circumstances. So that would be the first thing that I would say.
So important. I'm just in this place where I've spoken to so many of my colleagues who are doctors, and
Right.
we're all just like, oh my God, I'm actually afraid. Like, this is a different thing, and because we like to know the answers, we don't always know. We can't always answer the questions with this. I mean, how do you help with so much uncertainty? And even like, for those of us who are parents, those of us who are leaders, those of us who are doctors, and just people on planet Earth, I mean, it's so uncertain.
Right. Well, look, this is an unprecedented experience for all of us. And if I have a mother that's nearing 100, and it's an unprecedented experience for her. So there's nothing like this in our lifetime. So we don't, that not only from the standpoint of the disease itself, but from the standpoint of the isolation that we're being asked to engage in to stop the virus, or to stall the spread of it. So, and there's the end to what I was listening earlier to your conversation with Elisa in particular, that there's also not a ton known. There's some known about the virus itself, but not a lot. And so the treatments working against it it's all evolving. So I think that there's a couple different things. One is that we understand that change is basically our best known. I mean, that the only thing that we know for sure is that change will occur.
Mhm.
And if change and uncertainty have been difficult for us in the past, then starting to adopt an attitude of, I need to become flexible and adaptive in the face of this change, that what you start to do is to work with your mind to change your attitude, and that the attitude would be, in this uncertain time, I need to be as flexible and adaptive as I can. And that the notion of, will we be dealing with uncertainty? Yes, and we probably will be for a while. And so again, it's recognizing that you may be anxious with this kind of unknown, uncertain future. But what you can do is that you can be in charge of how and what you think, and that's going to make a big difference in how we manage what we do going forward.
Yeah, and I think that it's such words of wisdom, and the question that really comes to my mind right away is, so how the hell do I actually do that? Because it sounds great, and I've been on all the, you've been even on some other panels with me where we're like, people are just like, well, that's great, but how do I do it? And I've often said that if you want the shortcut to what Eckhart Tolle is talking about, go see Joan Rosenberg, because she knows how to allow you to implement this right away. So how do I implement that, though? I mean, like,
So do you
what
want
are your
well, there's two parts to this. So, Tom, one part is handling our thinking, how and what we think about, and the second part is handling our emotional state, the feelings that move through us. So I can speak to both parts of that. What would you like me to tackle?
Let's dive right in, because it's so practical, I think, for everyone here.
Okay, well, let's go to how and what one thinks. The idea with our thinking, again, we can get lost in the circumstances of what's going on, and because there's so much uncertainty, and because there's so much, it's dramatic in terms of the effect that this has on one's physical being. It's scary. It's like obviously we're confronted with with potential mortality, something most of us don't think about. So following the guidelines and the encouragement from your prior speakers in terms of handling things like, and what you've also been prescribing, handling things like sunlight, like sleep, like your nutrition and diet, all those different kinds of things are going to be critical things that you can do that create a sense of control over your life, given what we don't know. So that the focus shifts. You take in information, I would say, take in information in smaller bits. Don't
Mhm.
stay stuck on TV and watch day in and day out the reports, because all it does is going to keep your body and your system in a higher alert state and a more anxious and fearful state. I would say make a choice about how much you watch, cut that back significantly, and maybe watch a little bit in the morning and maybe a little bit at night, and instead stay focused on, again, being in charge of what you're taking into your mind, and secondarily then what you're thinking about. So what can you think about? Well, this is because most of us are held up in our homes, right? Then it's a time for many different things in terms of how we work with our mind. It's a time of completion. So if there's projects that you haven't completed around home, or letters you wanted to write, or whatever it might be, uncluttering or decluttering a space, that you can engage in something that is involved with completion. It's also, interestingly enough, a time of creation. So I would say
Mm.
once you complete, then go create. If you had old skills or old hobbies that you engaged in, I would say go back to those. If you want to learn something new, like learning a new language or learning a new skill, this is a good time to do it. So that what we begin to do is we shift away from the panic kinds of things on the outside, and we bring it into how we want to act and who we want to be. So that what we're doing is we're controlling the inside. You look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, the interesting part to me is the completion is really good, because we've got so many projects and we're always trying to help other people out, that what we did was we're going to clean up some of the clutter. We're going to reorganize the bedroom. We're going to complete a few things. And then it's just like, okay, so what are our new projects? And these can be projects like Talia decided that she was going to do a project, we watched a little TV on Shark Tank, and she found Stitch Fix, and she's like, I want to order the clothes, because it's like you do a little thing online and then you get the designer and they send you stuff. I said, well, let's make a project out of this. Why don't we go and you can tell me, do some research and tell me what's going on. Like, is it cheaper to do it this way? Is it more expensive? What would the alternatives be? And she got so excited about creating this new thing. And it was just like, and then we all got into it. And then Jill's like, well, maybe I'll order from there too. So creation, I think, and completion, so important.
Right. Well, so again, and these are things that now you're taking charge of what you're thinking about and what you're focused on. And again, part of it is not staying stuck in the external circumstances. It's being aware of the external circumstances, which are the facts of our life, but that we can make choices about how we handle things. And again, the goal is to stay calm. The more fearful and anxious we are, the more we decrease our immune response. The more we're able to stay calm and to stay in, if you will, kind of a faith or trusting space, despite all the chaos and despite all the confusion, you can be in charge of calm in your own mind.
So one of the things that comes up and me a lot is like, it's hard because I want to share this positive outlook with people, but then people that triggers a lot of stuff, I think, in people, because it's like, well, there's so much bad stuff going on, what are the how can when
How do
that
you
comes
respond to
up in
that?
me?
Right.
Yeah, and like, how do I deal with it in me? Because I mean, but I guess what I'm saying is, I know this is bad outside.
Right.
And I know that people are suffering, and I know that people are scared, and I know that people are going to die, and that sucks. Like, I
Yep.
don't want all that, but how do I deal with it personally and within my family?
Same thing. It would be you make again, we all have to make a choice about how we handle what's happening in our minds. And I choose to hold attitudes that are positive, kind, and optimistic. And that because if I get lost in the negativity and I get lost in the pessimism, I'm now compromising my own sense of being. So one of the questions I would ask people to think about during this time, because it's also a time for contemplation, it's a time for self-reflection. It's like, who do you want to be? If we're quiet and we have an opportunity to think about the impact this is having on our lives or our loved ones, friends, family, whoever, then who do I want to be and how do I want to show up in the world? And that so that if there's outside forces that are going, yes, there's horrible stuff happening outside. Yes, that's true. But the only thing we have is ourselves and the present moment and how we choose to be in that present moment. And so it's like, I can acknowledge the negativity, but I don't choose to live that negativity. And I would just say, Tom, that's the way to respond to it. It's like, yes, the outside is what it is, acknowledged, so validated, and the goal instead is for me to maintain my own sense of balance and calm, and I'm going to choose to hold attitudes that help me be resilient.
Right. And so one of the things for me, I really like your approach to when these feelings come up,
Right.
what do I do with them? Because you are the most practical person I know to address these things ever.
Right,
and I
right.
want to make sure that you have a chance to share some of the, how do I actually put it into practice?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So let me respond to that piece of it. The so what we've been covering is how to handle your thinking, and again, adopt positive, optimistic, resilient attitudes, with an understanding that change is a central part of this. That I'm going to be flexible and adaptive in the face of change, which is an uncertainty. But the other thing that's happening, of course, is that we're dealing with a whole range of feelings, and my work is focused on helping people handle unpleasant feelings. Now, the formula, because I've described the way to handle it in a formula, and a colleague of mine so kindly called it the Rosenberg reset. So that's what I'm going to describe right now. I didn't name that, but I've adopted the name. And the reset, the Rosenberg reset, involves a formula of 1 choice, 8 feelings, 90 seconds. And the one choice that I'm inviting people into is to be as aware of and in touch with their moment-to-moment experience as possible. We can choose to check out during this time. So I'm sure that there are any number of people that are going to be doing weed, or they're going to be doing drinking, or they're going to binge, they'll binge watch to stay checked out. But the key really is to stay aware, because again, when we choose into awareness, we're much more in charge of how and what we think, and we're much better able to handle what we feel. So again, the invitation is into awareness, not avoidance. The second part of the formula have to do with 8 feelings, and I spent really my professional lifetime trying to understand what made it so difficult for people to handle unpleasant feelings. And what I realized as the neuroscience research started to emerge in the early 2000s is that what made it so difficult for people to handle unpleasant feelings is because most of us come to know what we feel through, let me try that again. Most of us come to know what we're feeling emotionally through bodily sensation. And what dawned on me is that it's not that we don't want to feel unpleasant feelings. We don't want to feel the bodily sensation that help us know what that feeling is. So think, for instance, heat at the neck or the chest going up into our face for embarrassment, or think of heat in the arms or the back of the neck for anger. Or think of maybe a downward sensation in the chest for disappointment or sadness. And the experience is that we don't like that bodily sensation, so we try to cut off from it. And as soon as we cut off from our feelings, then we're actually cutting off from 50% of our knowledge base,
Hmm.
right? And we're also muffling the positive feelings that we can experience. So then how do we solve it? Let me get a water for a second. The way we solve it is the 90 seconds piece. And that's that again, this is tied into the bodily sensation. So that the idea here is that and it was really an observation made by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, who's a Harvard trained neuroscientist.
Mhm.
And in her book, The Stroke of Insight, what she suggested, the observation she made, is that when a feeling gets fired off, there's a rush of biochemicals that actually trigger these bodily sensations that I just talked about. But they rush into the bloodstream and they flush out of the bloodstream in roughly 90 seconds. So what I realized is if I could get people to stay present to the bodily sensation, these short-lived bodily sensations, then they could stay aware of and in touch with the feeling and allow it to move in and out of them or through them, just
Mhm.
like an ocean wave. So think of it as riding ocean waves, and that the feeling is going to move in and out. Now, again, am I saying it's one wave? No. Am I saying that we're not going to experience these on a daily basis or ever again? It's just one time? Heck no, right? This is on a day-to-day basis. We're going to experience a wide range of feelings. So then how do you put it into play in a situation with what we're experiencing now? So there's a variety of things. Most of us probably are experiencing helplessness. For
Right.
those who are challenged with employment changes or not being able to see friends and they're extroverted or a variety of things like that, then there's probably also sadness and disappointment mixed in with this. And so it's, and also perhaps anger, like things should have been done sooner or it could have been handled better. So one thing is to recognize is that all of us are going through an experience of loss. And
Mhm.
loss involves those feelings of sadness, helplessness, anger, and disappointment. So, and again, it's a loss of the unknown. It's a loss of a stable life that we had, a predictable one. It's loss of contact with my friends in the moment. It's loss of enjoyment of activities. It's so that we're experiencing multiple losses now, and it means dealing with at least those 4 feelings. But it doesn't mean staying in that.
Mhm.
It
So
means
when
go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just so excited because like when I started to experience this, I just took your word for it because I saw how powerful your work was with other people. And it's really interesting to really fully feel that emotion because you think it's going to overwhelm you because what I've realized is that the longer and longer I don't actually get in touch with that feeling, the more the feeling gets out of control and grows into something else.
Right.
And then you know me, Joan. I mean, and people who know me, I get pretty fiery
Yes.
to a fault. And so there's the good fiery part of me, which will put on something like this and do whatever I can to help the world. Then there's the other part of me who kind of acts like a jerk sometimes because I don't sit back and just feel several waves of 90-second emotions. And so it's so important for everybody listening to understand that what Joan's talking about is you're going to feel this no matter what. And you can choose how to deal with it. And so you can deal with it when it's at a lower level and manageable, or you can
Yep.
deal with it when it's at a level when it's out of control. And, so important. I just wanted to interject because it's just, I see it work so much in my life.
Well, the beauty of it is that you have a personal experience of kind of changing things up with it. So yes, and let me make 2 responses to that, because sometimes what we'll use is a default feeling. So for instance, some people will default everything that they're feeling, including sadness and disappointment or helplessness. They'll just default it into anger. And that's not healthy either. So I don't want people to just have a default feeling. I want them to be able to experience the whole range of what they're feeling. The second is, to your point, yes, I want people to have, when they're aware of the experience, to deal with it so that what's happening is it's like controlling a water faucet flow as opposed to a fire hose flow, right? Which we don't
Mhm.
control. So yeah, so that it's really being able to manage um, the flow of those feelings moving in and out of us. So, and again, we're going to have to deal with this on a daily basis because we're going to be activated. We're going to be stirred up by stuff. And will there be genuine fear? Yes, which psychology thinks of as danger in the moment right now. Will there be anxiety? Again, yes, there will be. That again, we think of this as diffuse apprehension of the future, which is true for all of us, but we don't have to live there. Instead, understand that probably in this situation, most of us are feeling helpless and vulnerable. And part of the way we work with this is to take action. So I would say this is a time, again, along with all the other suggestions that people have made. So the ones that involve sleep and nutrition and laughter and sunlight and all those kinds of things, do them. They're recommended for great reason. But there's also different kind of actions you can take. So you can journal, you can meditate. I love Terry's suggestion of laughter. You can complete things. You can be engaged in creating things. That all of that takes you out of anxiety and puts you in charge of what's taking place.
So Joan,
And
one
yes,
of the questions that keeps popping up in our little scroll here is,
yes.
why is anxiety not on the list of emotions? Or I should say feelings.
Because again, more typically on a day-to-day basis, anxiety is really vulnerability. And
Hmm.
so when we're, and that's true, if even in this time, if you think of us describing ourselves as anxious, what we're really feeling is we're feeling vulnerable. We have this sense that we could get hurt.
So
Whether it's getting, go ahead.
as maybe a slightly different example, right before we turned on this webcast,
Yes.
I certainly felt some crazy feelings inside that I would describe as anxiety. Now, not enough to make me not do it, but I sat there with it. So, but when you say vulnerability, I'm like, yeah, that fits. I was like, we have thousands of people who are watching this and many more afterwards. Boy, I'm opening myself up. What if it doesn't go right? What if,
Right.
I screw up?
Yes, and all that is vulnerability. Now so what I would rather have people do is, rather than describe themselves as anxious, understand that the anxiety is really, in most cases, vulnerability. And I will tell you that if it's not vulnerability, it's one or more of the other 7 feelings.
Yeah.
So if I could say I'm anxious, but it's actually that I'm angry about something or I'm sad about something, but I'm not expressing that to the person it belongs to. So it's most of what people are experiencing right now is feeling vulnerable and having the sense that they could get hurt. And the important thing that I want people listening to understand is that if they know that they can experience and move through the other 7 feelings beyond just that vulnerable state, then they will be able to handle whatever the situation comes up. So
Yeah.
go ahead. No, please.
I'm sorry. It's fun. I just go back to what Talia said to me. It's like, if I'm not willing to just accept what's going on and then go through the emotion and allow my brain to remain calm, I can't take the next step. And so many people here are spouses, lovers, friends, family, parents. I want to be here for my daughter in the best way I can. And we have so much influence around those with those around us. We have
Right.
such an ability to change the way they think, and especially our children and who are teens who are like, oh yeah, I don't pay attention to you anymore or whatever, but they're still looking out of the corner of their eye. And
That's
so it's
right.
really, you need to model this behavior because it's going to help your health, but it's infectious.
Yeah, and infectious in a good way. Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're talking
Maybe
yeah,
a poor choice in words.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's the unconscious at work. It's all good. Yeah. So and the other part of this, and that you just kind of referenced that, Tom, is how important it again. So we want to model calm. We want to stay with that calm, positive, optimistic view. I want you to be asking questions as you're being at home. I want you to start asking questions of yourself and perhaps of your family members about who they want to be in this time, who they want to be going forward, and how they want to show up in the world. What is that going to look like, and to reflect on that, and then to take action in support of that. The other thing that's super important around this, and I talked about it in a different interview, is that understand. And I want to make two important points, and then I know you're going to have the beautiful Dr. Rosanna Hodge come on. Who I just adore, by the way. So if you're listening, Roseanne, just know how much I adore you. So the thing that two really important things that I want people to understand. Experiencing the feelings is these 8 feelings that I'm talking about is emotional strength. And that's those being able to tolerate those 8 feelings is actually what helps you feel capable in the world. It's being able to handle the undesired emotional outcome that we go through is what helps us feel capable in the world. That's the first thing. The second part of emotional strength is asking for help. It's acknowledging the need to lean on others. And so what I want people to understand is emotional strength involves experiencing and moving through those 8 feelings and asking for help. And shutting down on the feelings is actually the weakness part. So be present to the feelings, ask for help. And that's really what I want to end on, is that this is a crucial time. This is physical distance. This is not social isolation. And so I want to be emphatic about people staying in connection with other people. It's a time of being in connection. It's a time of community. It's a time of sharing, and it's a time of reaching out and being attuned to not only your needs, but the needs of other people, and staying in good connection with them. So it's and then when possible to contribute, like Tom, you're doing today. This is a contribution. It's not only you're serving many needs. It's connection and it's contribution, and it's all about serving the community. So those are many different things that we can do in order to make our way through this challenging time.
Joan, thank you so much. Thanks for sliding a compliment in there. I would say the same to you. I know that you've been doing a lot of this to support everyone and contribute. And I can't say enough. I'm not much of a reader on paper because I kind of got a little overwhelmed with all the medical papers in medical school. So when I learned about your book, I grabbed it on Audible, and eventually we actually did it as a book club at work in our office. However, I will say I got through chapter 2 and I've never looked back. I mean, I even saw that some people said they had downloaded the Audible while we were talking. Guys, when you get through literally chapter 2, you're going to have and then the rest of the book you need to do. There's so much in there, but man,
there is a lot. Yeah.
Chapter 2, I was just like, light bulbs went off, so much more ease in my life. And I became so, and I'll be honest, I want to help everybody else. And the one thing we often do when we want to help others is we forget that we should really be helping ourselves first and foremost so we can help them. And it really gave me that gift to finally start to be able to care for myself at a level I'd never known before. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I saw a couple questions. The book is called 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. And Tom, I'm honored by being part of this. I'm honored by your kind words. So I'm with you. If you do a next one, I'm in. So. All
right. That sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Joan.
You bet.
So everyone, as promised at the beginning, I am going to give us a whopping 3-minute break. I'm sure there's a few people who just need a quick break like myself so we can keep going. Our friend Rosanne Kapana Hodge is with us right now. So just a quick moment because this is such a long thing. So hopefully you'll all see that we're going to take a quick 3-minute break. So I guess that on my side looks like 4:53. I will on the East Coast, and we'll get back going in just a moment. We'll see you in a second. All right. Well, I am back here, but we are going to give everybody another minute or two, like promised. And I know our friend Roseanne is here, so we're ready to go when it's time. And so we'll just give everybody just a little more time. Let's. All right. Well, it's looking like we have got ourselves 4:53. So we'll just chit chat a little bit so that we don't start right on the moment here. But I see that Dr. Roseanne Kapana-Hodge is with us.
Hello, Dr. Tom.
Hello. Good. I was going to ask you if we could do a quick thing. Let's see. Is everybody hearing the sound here? It sounds like someone told me we didn't hear. The sound's not on.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You can hear me?
Yeah, you sound totally fine. And then somebody says I can hear you both.
Okay, good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks
Boy,
for
you
all
got
the
a
feedback.
responsive crew over there.
Dude, I'm telling you, this is amazing. Everybody's just stepped up to really make this happen. And I'm just so amazed at how the global community has really come together. It's so fantastic. So glad you're here.
It fills your heart.
So what we're gonna do is, this is Roseanne Kapana-Hodge. And again, like I've been saying with everybody else, I have these really long bios because she is a thought leader in children's mental health and integrative therapy. She founder and director over at Dr. Roseanne and Associates. She does all this 360 reboot stuff. She can tell you about it. You can read it on her website, drroseanne.com. But the thing is, she works with a lot of kids with autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, really specializes in some of the neuropsychiatric disorders, especially seen with pandas and pans. And her and I have been doing so many discussions about how to talk to our kids at a time like this. So super important. And the thing is, you have to understand, this woman is a force of nature. She gets stuff done. She's like out there. We work together on some of the most complicated cases. And she literally is just like, it's like when we get together, there's breakthroughs in these kids. And I've seen some of my most complicated kids who I've worked so hard on need this extra something. And she always seems to know exactly what it is. So we brought her special sauce to the amalgamation of all of us today. So thanks for joining us, Roseanne.
Well, that is just so lovely. Thank you for all your lovely words about me. We're like a big love fest, all of us friends. So we do this all the time, and it feels like even more amplified because we're all lending a hand to each other. And this is a wonderful thing that you're doing, Dr. Tom. And I do have the privilege of working with Tom. I call him the disease detective. So, but I work with kids of all kinds of issues and have for almost 30 years. I feel pretty blessed. And,
you don't seem that old. You just,
I know.
it's not,
well, hey,
it's not possible.
I started working right in undergrad in psychiatric hospitals. And then I said, this is like absolutely horrible mental health. There has to be a different way. And I already was holistic my whole life. So my skin is very good because I've been eating really healthy, as Dr. Terry Walls probably talked a lot about how important it is for your brain and your body. But, this is definitely a crisis, that we've never faced. And parents are feeling overwhelmed. They feel a loss of control over, what is the unknown, just themselves, and their children are feeling the same way. So, this is a great dialogue. If anybody has any questions about how to talk to their kids, there are no easy answers. We just know what works best with kids. And that can be applied in this situation as well. And, for parents, Tom, you're working with parents all the time in these situations, how to actually talk to their kids about what is happening with the coronavirus, what is happening with school, and there's just so many layers to this, because as we move through it, it was like, how do you talk about the virus? Then it's homeschooling, which is not really homeschooling, it's just temporary education. Then all of our special education kids are really getting the short end of the stick. So there's a lot going on for people.
Yeah. One quick thing, because I want to ask you something just to point out, because we originally had you and Joan in different spots.
Yeah.
So somebody pointed out that someone had just posted the order, and we did swap that because Roseanne was actually on another spot doing her thing. But we have some questions about 12-year-old grandson saying he wants to kill himself because he has asthma and there's a troubled family member. Like, how do we talk to people? Because I can imagine, if I were a little kid right now, heck, I'm a big kid, and it's like, you hear, I have one of these pre-existing conditions that puts me at potential risk.
Yeah.
A kid who's 12, I mean, they must be overwhelmed by this. What are you doing?
And actually, what I'm seeing is that the tweens and the teens are having a much harder time than younger kids. Not that every younger kid is exempt from this, but younger kids take what we tell them and believe it, right? And usually we're giving them some relief and reassurance, and they're saying to themselves, okay, I hear you, mom and dad. And if mom and dad are not freaking out and they have their stuff together, the kids kind of move on. But the older kids are understanding the ramifications. So, you have a kid who has a pre-existing condition and they're really showing a lot of concern. Number one, turn off the TV and limit access. But this is a point of conversation. So while here I am, a psychologist, talking to you about mental health. So when somebody says they want to harm themselves, we need to talk to them, right? So kids make statements out of complete fear. And let me tell you, people are in fear, not just children, but adults as well. So, if you have a mental health provider, you certainly want to talk to them if this is somebody that has a regular provider. But let's talk about what you need to do in this situation. So you're going to validate their worry. You're going to be like, honey, I get it. You're worried. What can you do about this? What can you control in your asthma, right? So we're here in this beautiful summit talking about lots of tools and building a toolkit. And these are things that adults can do, but these are things that kids can do. So can he focus on breath work? Can he control his diet? Say, honey, let's look at what we can do for our diet right now to improve your asthma. There's lots of things. So giving them a sense of control is where you start. You also really, when kids threaten to harm themselves, you want to say, listen, that's not going to help us right now. What's an alternative? Can you focus on a feeling? Can you focus on, what are you feeling? I'm upset. I'm worried. So I think that's really where you need to start. And kids are making these kind of statements. I'm having lots of calls from clients and people contacting me on Messenger. My kid is completely melting down. The first case of corona showed up at my town. And now I think I'm going to have the corona. This is what these kids are saying. And, both Dr. Tom and I work with kids with OCD that have PANS and PANDAS. These are really valid concerns. And if your child has a previous history of wanting to harm themselves, you've already got a mental health provider. You need to reach out to them.
Right. So one of the things too is I think it's so important to give people that sense of control because we don't know. But the other part, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm a firm believer that we should talk to our children like they're equals, like inside. Now, I understand that my 10-year-old doesn't have the same level of sort of physical and mental and emotional development that I do. And in some respects, she might actually be further along than me. You never know. But
I'm going to have to agree with that, Tom.
Thank you.
Because I know Talia. Anyway, but go ahead.
But yeah, but so we want to speak to them and not I'm going to be blunt. We don't want to bullshit them, right? We want to let them know, like, there's been no deaths in the US of a person under 19, right? And there's only been one person reported at the age of 14. So I think facts are important. Now, does that mean no one else will get sick and die? No, but
No. So start with the facts, start with what's developmentally appropriate, hold yourself together. Don't be a basket case when you're talking to your kids. They pick up on not just what you're saying to them, but what your body is showing to them. So younger kids are going to be able to take those facts, be reassured, and move on. Older kids may come in waves. And that's the other part as we're moving into the weeks of this. A teenager, the grandson that had asthma that is, really showing some signs, he may take that and say, okay, all right, I'm not going to do that again. But 3 days later, something else may upset him. So, he needs to build a resource kit. And certainly if you're really concerned, about somebody self-harming, I don't freak out about these statements as much as other providers do. You really have to want to harm yourself, but it is an indicator that you feel things are completely out of control and you have a sense of hopelessness and you need help. So there are licensed mental health providers. Everybody, just probably 80% of providers at this point in mental health are online virtually right now. So if you don't have one, you can find one.
Yeah. So one of the things that I had mentioned, and I'm not sure if you had jumped on the call yet or not, because I know you're doing that other event, it's so important for us to lead by example because we have such a huge ability to influence those around us, especially our children. But can you talk about like our teens? Because a lot of people are like, my teen is like, I hate you. You're not the person for me. I'm not following you anymore type of thing. So, what do you say to that group of people where you're starting to have some of that struggle with your teen but still leading?
Yeah, so first of all, everybody's going to be struggling with everybody in communication because if you're quarantined, you're going to get on each other's nerves. So I always like to normalize everything and be like, okay, what are you going to do? Right. So I think, first of all, set some ground rules, like, say you're going to feel irritated. You're going to feel bored. You're going to be hating doing homeschooling. This is how we're going to do it. So a routine in place and being clear about it is the first place to start. And it's the same thing with communication rules. So if your kid is being really, really negative, that is often their way of showing you their fear, right? So, teenagers, they're developing emotionally. We're all developing emotionally throughout our whole lives. And so we're trying, right? And we're always hopefully evolving and bettering ourselves. And so I think just saying, I hear you, you're being snarky, look for differences. Like, is your kid always snarky, or is this a new snarky? And then really open that conversation and let them know, like, hey, I'm feeling really stressed. Clearly you are. And they might say no and say, okay, well, what can we do about it? And offer suggestions. That's really what I would start. So somebody's asking about like a good place to find resources for mental health professionals. Always licensed only. There are people out there that are not licensed, depending on different states, but you can go to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. You can go, I like to get symptom specific, international OCD. You also can Google and go on Psychology Today, and it will list exactly what it is, what insurances they take, and that can be really, really helpful. And, depending on where you are, people are in different countries. If you're in a different country, it's very easy to work with, providers virtually. We have providers. All of our therapists are working with people remotely. And, I think one of the biggest concerns that I'm still hearing about from parents is that kids are worried, not even about themselves. They're worried about their grandparents and parents dying. This is where I'm hearing the breakdowns with teenagers, that, they might have an older parent, right? I had my last kid at 39, so you definitely need to have that conversation. And I think being preemptive about it. And I think one of the best ways to talk to kids are, okay, tell them the facts. Grandma and grandpa live in Florida, and this is what they're doing to protect their house. I was traveling a lot, and as Dr. Tom and my youngest had said to me, Mommy, are you worried? And this was, over a month ago. And I said, I'm really not. I do this. I take care of myself. I take these supplements. And he went on his merry way. So depending on your kid's age, let them know what you are doing to control it. We also, I think most people that are elderly are doing their best to stay in. But I also hear of parents, my friends telling me, oh my gosh, my parents are out at the grocery store. And like, until they were on quarantine, they were out and about. So I don't know if I'd share that with my kid if they didn't know that. So I'm not saying lying, say they're doing their best, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think this is also a time where, I know I have some family who are joining us, and, those who are in a more high risk, either group because of their age or because of their pre-existing medical situation, it's a time to request that they actually take it a little more seriously. Just like I posted a blog article about millennials being at more risk. I mean,
Yes.
we all need to do this together. So a couple, someone asked, made a comment that like, hey, we had the issues in the Bahamas with the hurricane and everything, but then people are like, kind of ended with this too shall pass. I mean, and it's like, this,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are exhausted at this point. I mean,
Exhausted.
so what do you do to be able to keep yourself going, and so that you can be that example for your kid?
Yeah. So what a great question. I also, before I get started, I want to actually talk about trauma, because what you're talking about, what happened with earthquakes and fires and these natural disasters, created a lot of pre-existing, created trauma for people. So I don't want to negate how important prior traumatic events are. And if you haven't dealt with a prior trauma, no matter what it is, this might be harder for you. And if you already have anxiety, this may be harder for you. It's the same for children, and it's the same for kids. But, in terms of what people can do now, they can do a lot. And it all starts with regulating the nervous system. So, these are things that Dr. Tom and I do every day anyway. So out of this should come, I need to take care of myself. But while you're in this crisis mode, I can give you tips to calm that chaos. And so what are easy things you can do? They're free, they're accessible. You can meditate. I like Insight Timer. It's a free meditation. There's Calm, there's Headspace. And why is meditation important? Whether it's meditation, biofeedback, deep breath work, It doesn't matter. They're all going to calm that nervous system down. They're going to stop your emotional centers in your limbic system from overactivating. They're going to get your nervous system to regulate, right? They're going to get you out of that sympathetic dominant state in that overactivation and get things calmer. And until that happens, you're not going to feel yourself. You're not going to be your best self. You're going to not be available. You're going to be more irritated. And I really recommend, whether you have to take the time to do this for yourself, but for me, you do this, you know, grab a kid, grab 2 kids in your house, grab your husband, whatever you got, grab your wife, and try to take 10 minutes to do this. It will bring you relief. It gives your children a sense of control, and it does give you control. So that's critical, important task to do. And like I said, these are very accessible things, whether you're using an app or YouTube.
Right. And I think that the thing that you mentioned about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic sides of this is the autonomic part of our nervous system, or the automatic things, like our pupils constrict and dilate. We breathe most of the time without thinking about it. We digest our food. Our blood vessels constrict and dilate. Our body has control over these. It also impacts our immune system. And the more we're in a sympathetic state is a squirrel runs in front of your car, you slam on the brakes and you pull it around and your heart's beating. You need that, but then you want that to calm down. And so when we do things like you were mentioning, and that transition us to a parasympathetic state, we get that immune boost, rather than if we stay in that sympathetic state. Or like Joan was talking about, we have 8 unpleasant feelings. If we are willing to sit with them for 90 seconds and experience that wave, the next part which would have usually happened, which is it compounds to something more, won't be happening, or it'll be happening a lot less. And then we'll get into an immune supportive state. And one point I want to make before I ask my next question is, I always hear, you know, when you talk about meditation and breathing, I mean, for some people, they're loaded things. I want to remind people, meditation is focus. It's basically focus and breathing, right? So whether you love reading or painting or drawing or praying, whatever it is that you love to do. I mean, if you love doing the laundry, that may be meditative for you. It's about getting yourself in that sense of calm.
Absolutely. And it can be physical too. It can be yoga. It can be running. There's lots of things that can bring that in. And you're right, people are afraid. I love simple breath work, a 5, 7, 8 breath, you know, in for 5, hold for 7, and out, exhalation for 8 seconds can dramatically calm the nervous system. It's the intention, Tom. When you do any of these things, you're going to set an intention that I'm going to calm my nervous system. I'm going to stop that inner chatter, and it does work. It's very effective. It's the practice of it. You can't do it one time. And there is a toolkit. There's a bunch of things that you can do. And I know meditation, like you said, freaks people out, but it is a process that everybody can learn to do. And I always say that monks take their whole lives to learn how to be great meditators. So you and I have, our brains go all the time.
Right.
I have to practice meditation. I can only do progressive meditation where I'm listening to a tape and it walks me through breath and relaxing and tensing my body. And there's tons of free things. There's tons of resources. People are putting resources up. And these are actionable things, and they work. And you can start these things. I started my kids doing yoga as soon as I don't even know if they were walking before we started doing yoga.
Well, and some of the thing I think it's whatever that thing that gets you to the place of focus and relaxation is, you know, singing, whatever. One of the things we're doing is I love Wim Hof breathing. It's just kind of fun. I enjoy it. I've done a lot of yoga and meditation, but there's so much evidence that through his breath work and a little cold exposure and a little bit of body movements that you can actually fight off infection. And he's actually been injected with, you know, endotoxins from these bacteria and fought them off. And I'm not suggesting we all do that, but what I know is there's research that shows if you spend the time to do a breathing exercise, you can bump up immune function and potentially fight off viral and bacterial illnesses. Now, I know one of the things you use a lot in your work is getting people to do heart math, which is a biofeedback that allows you to improve your heart rate variability, and it helps you learn how to do it. But not everybody's going to be able to purchase one. I mean, it's like $160,
Right,
but it also takes time to get. And I'm sure there's going to be run on it because
right.
everybody's looking for things. But what you can take out of that is the fundamental part about the breath work that they talked about is heart-centered gratitude breathing. And so it's really simple, guys. If you were to sit down and relax, just sit down and start breathing, and then notice that your chest is expanding and contracting, and kind of just focus on the fact that your chest expands and contracts when you're breathing. And after you do that for a minute or two and you feel comfortable there, then think about something that you're so grateful for, like all of our friends today, like Roseanne and Joan and Elisa and everyone else, Terry, who are coming to share with us. And I know Heather's up and Kasha soon. I'm so grateful for them. I'm grateful for my family, my wife, my daughter, my extended family. And if you're in a tough spot with some of your friends, think about something you'd love to do. 5 minutes, all it takes.
And that's all it is. And whether I do positive visualizations every day. So, we know through decades of psychoimmunology research, just like Dr. Tom was talking about, that we actually have a lot of control over our immune system. And it's really key for all types of physical health. It's a barrier to physical health if your mental health is off. And right now, it's perfectly normal for all of us as a collective. We are stressed. But we do have that ability to regulate our mindset, how we view things, the positivism. And you're right, we may not be able to order our heart mask products and get them in, but we can look up, there's 360 breathing as a technique. You can look up a 5-7-8 breath. On YouTube, there's tons of meditations. You can look up 5-minute yoga. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. But the powerful component is that it's you, and you have this control and this ability within yourself to control how you view things. I'm sure our wonderful Dr. Joan talked a lot about this. She's pretty masterful in that. And that is the truth. And it's not just for yourself. Your children need this lesson from you. And that's important.
Yeah, and I know that with Dr. Heather Paulson, I mean, I think we're going to dive into even a little bit more of this stuff because it is so important. And the number one tip I'll give people is to pick one thing that we've talked about today and do it right away. Start now. I was talking with JJ Virgin the other day, and she said that, there's research on EFT tapping and meditation where we can increase our salivary IgA levels, and IgA is one of our immunoglobulins, right?
Tapping, yeah.
One of our immunoglobulins that creates antibodies against these infections. And you can increase that by 118%. So essentially doubling it in 7 days.
Yeah.
But if you don't start and do it for 7 days, it's not going to work. So give yourself that 7-day challenge.
Take those steps now. Practice. It's that daily practice. So 40 days of meditation every day for 10 minutes or longer changes brainwave functioning. Everybody can do that. I know it seems like an impossible feat, but I promise you, if Dr. Tom and I can quiet our minds, anybody can quiet our minds because they're always going. So, your body knows no difference between good and bad stress. And so it's really important, a life lesson here. We're all talking about ways to support ourselves. And people are putting in lots of, what he said for 7 days is to do any practice for 7 days. EFT tapping, we are an EFT tapping practice, and we have practitioners that do it with people remotely. But the Tapping Foundation, you could Google EFT tapping videos.
Tons of people.
Amazing tool that works on affirmations and then tapping along meridians to basically control your stress. How do you learn EFT tapping? Just that. You get onto YouTube and you Google, how do I do EFT tapping?
Right. And there's so many, it's amazing. The globe is coming together to share all these amazing resources, and so many people are giving them out. The Wim Hof, everything is half off. Many people are doing free programs. It is absolutely amazing. But my point was, I don't really care what you do, because what works for Roseanne, what works for me, what works for Dr. Song and everyone else here is different, because we're all unique individuals who have unique things. So for me, when I got into yoga, I couldn't sit and meditate, and I couldn't do regular yoga, but I learned Ashtanga yoga, which is very physical. And through the physical practice, it brought my brain down, and now I can sit and meditate, whereas I couldn't before.
Right.
Yeah. So I really thank you so much to everybody who's putting some of these,
Because it just do something, right?
Anything.
So, I absolutely use a healthy tool. There's so many out there and they're so accessible. I mean, I do a ton of neurofeedback and people have to come in to see me, but I also teach all the time, all the things that always have that you can do. And I want people to be empowered. This is stressful, but you can control it,
Yeah.
And there's mind, body, and spirit, and they're all connected. And that's critical for people's wellness, mental health wellness, and physical wellness.
So I've got one question kind of in closing for you, because I know Heather Paulson is here for us too, and I appreciate everybody being here. Someone asked about, and I thought it was interesting, and I know you do work with this, so we're cleaning a lot. We're being told to clean a lot, like obsessively almost. And should I be worried about becoming OCD by cleaning too much?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so first of all, I mean, as I noted, you and I see a lot of people with OCD from infectious disease. It's one of the, I do QEEG brain maps, and it's one of the most common reasons of OCD that I actually see, even way more than genetic in my population. So for those people with OCD, we have a different set of parameters. You have to be very careful that you have to balance out that we do have to wash our hands. And then what happens with OCD? How does it start, right? So OCD can start with anxiety, and that it always starts with anxiety, and then a compulsive behavior, but more importantly, always obsessive thinking comes first. So can it lead to OCD? Yes. So, what is OCD really? It means you're spending an hour or more a day with obsessive or compulsive thoughts or behaviors. That's the clinical definition. If you feel that you are either reactivating OCD, have OCD, get onto IOCDF, right, the International OCD Foundation website, and find a provider who is on their website. You literally are wasting your time going to anybody else. People come to us from all over the United States, having seen dozens of therapists and never being properly treated for OCD. Right. But there's tons of people. So if you think you have OCD, many people think they do and they don't. It's an hour or more of obsessive compulsive behaviors, and moderate your cleanliness. Like sanitizing is important, but you don't need to do it 100 times in 3 hours.
Right. And I think that the question really was, will I develop it because they've asked us to clean more? And, I really don't see that happening. No. If you don't, it's what we're doing now. And the other thing is you're cleaning for for just a repetitive, obsessive reason. What we're doing is we're asking you, when your hands have been potentially exposed to something, clean them before you touch your mucous membrane. So you're doing it for a medical reason. And we're all doing these things more than we would have before, potentially. So lots of really good stuff coming up in the chat. Thanks everybody for participating. So Dr. Roseanne, so happy that you could be with us. Thanks so much for all the time and your expertise. And I love working with you and chatting. And so
thank you for doing this and supporting so many people. It's an amazing thing, Dr. Tom. Be well, everybody. Take care of your mental health. It's really important.
Yeah. Thanks again. See you soon.
Take care.
All right. So thanks, everyone. And thanks so much for Dr. Roseanne. And I see that Dr. Heather Paulson is with us, and we'll get her video cranked on in just a second. I think it'll pop onto her screen once she starts talking. So Dr. Heather Paulson is a really good friend of mine. She is a naturopathic oncologist, one of only a few in the country. And basically she's gone to naturopathic school and specialized in oncology. And what's really cool about that is she's one of the few people who actually knows what natural things do with chemotherapy and vice versa, and how to use them. So I use her as a resource quite a bit. But I think one of the important things to do is understand what more about what she does, which is she is the creator and curator of a thing called the Science and Soul of Healing, which is a online course about bringing together the physical and the energetic aspects of healing. And it's free for all of us now. It used to be paid, but she's giving it to us all during this time. And if you go to soulofhealing.com, it'll be there, and we'll post that link. But more importantly, with Heather, you know, the last time we got together physically was on a business trip to Hawaii, and I was coming out of snorkeling, and then Heather was jumping in, and she said, "Hey, you want to join me?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm thinking about heading in." And she's like, "Oh, come on out." And I said, "Well, there's always something that's spectacular that happens when Heather's around." And so what happened was we go out, and all of a sudden the whales are calling and talking to each other so much louder than they were even 10 minutes ago. And then we go way, way, way out, further than I'd been. And we saw, you know, a whale crest and spout water. And I was like, it's so amazing. And when you hang out with Dr. Heather, amazing stuff happens. And it's not always what you're expecting. So Heather Paulson, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Tom, thanks for having me. Hopefully this is flipping over to me, guys.
It did. I see you now.
Yay. Yes, I have a special relationship with whales for sure. And also a special relationship with uncertain times. You know, people with cancer deal with a lot of the questions that are coming up for all of us right now. You know, will my health be good or not? Am I going to make it out of this or not? What can I do with this level of uncertainty? My doctors are asking me to stay away from my loved ones because I might get sick. How do I handle that socially? So being somebody who specializes in cancer care gives me a unique perspective for all of you guys who are coming across these kinds of questions for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's so amazing to have you here, and it's nice to see you smile and stuff. It's like it's so nice to be together. So what are you telling people? I mean, because like, you know, we are getting we're trying to physically distance and socially connect, but I mean, it's certainly challenging.
Absolutely. So we are in uncertain times, and when we are in a state of uncertainty, there are things that we can do to create certainty in our lives. There are things that we can do to help anchor ourselves into who we are and what we are here to learn on the planet. So I have been talking to people about how to gear up mentally, physically, and emotionally for dealing with coronavirus, but gearing up can have to do with any level of uncertainty in your life, whether it's a health diagnosis or what's going on right now globally with the coronavirus. So parts of gearing up is to get grounded, establish rituals, anchor into community, which we're doing right now, and to remember that you've gotten through tough times before.
So tell me more about this ritual thing. Because so important. We're talking about keeping to a routine, but what's that mean for you?
To me, so actually rituals and ceremonies are part of everyday life for me. And you might have some things that you have as habits, but maybe haven't established them as a ritual or a ceremony. So in addition to studying naturopathic medicine and being a naturopathic oncologist, I've spent over a decade studying energy medicine with some great energy healers like Master Stephen Coe, as well as a Cherokee medicine man that is one of the interviews on the Soul of Healing. And I've been looking into this other aspect of our wellness and of our health that hasn't been addressed by supplements or diet or medication. And there's these other things that create wellness in ourselves. And you guys have heard this referenced by some of the other speakers, and we're going to go into that a little bit deeper. But for me, ceremony and ritual is part of my daily life. I started this morning by doing a morning prayer. And that is part of my daily life by giving thanks and gratitude to my previous teachers. Before jumping on this interview with you, Tom, I did a quick invocation to my teachers to make sure that I say things properly to all of you. And also ceremony and ritual can look like making your bed. You know, I don't personally love making my bed. And you can ask my mom, it's been a sense of childhood thing, but I've used that. Actually, one of my teachers challenged me to make my bed regularly in order to then be prepared to learn other ceremonies and rituals. Because if you don't do the day-to-day things with mindfulness and by bringing a state of awareness to it, then how can you be present for bigger ceremonies and bigger rituals in our lives? So that has translated into holding ceremonies with women's groups, holding ceremonies for people who have passed, and holding ceremonies for people who have been birthed. So these are parts of our lives that we tend to recognize together as a culture, but then there are ceremonial pieces of our lives that happen every single day.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find myself thinking about, I as an osteopath, I talk a lot about body, mind, spirit connection, and how that's really just been some words that we've used more recently to kind of be able to talk about the unity that is the human body. And I can think of a simple example, like if I were to, someone were to come in the room and kick me in the shins, I would have a physical pain response, but I would also have a mental and emotional response, and they're all tied together. So I mean, how are you recommending people sort of start to tie this back into their lives, where understanding that their emotional state and the things that they do throughout the day are really impacting their overall health, not just from an esoteric spiritual perspective, but from an everyday health perspective?
Yeah, so let's nerd out a little bit on the health information, because I am a doctor, right? And so I've studied with these other types of teachers, but first and foremost, I went to medical school, I did residency, and I'm a doctor, and I love research. So there's a couple of things that I want to share with you that might encourage you to start some type of practice in your life. So first and foremost, one of the things that Dr. Roseanne said is that we could probably meditate our entire lives and maybe not achieve a state of meditation. But I want to offer to you guys that there is actually a type of meditation that has been studied, that when new meditators do it for the first time and then they do the functional MRI brain mapping, their brains mimic someone who's meditated for 30 years as a monk. So does it take our entire lifetime to learn how to meditate? I would propose no. And this is the Twin Hearts meditation, and the meditation on Twin Hearts. And you can find so many free resources for this particular meditation. I personally do this meditation with Master Stephen Coe, and you can Google him and find him leading this meditation, and he's doing it for free right now, very many times per day, and has some recordings for healing the lungs right now as well. So the Twin Hearts meditation has been studied for mimicking the brain of a monk. Now, why would you
So
want
hold on
your
a second.
brain?
You can tell me that we know that the brain changes
Yes.
if you meditate a lot, but now you're telling me if I just do a little bit and for a short period of time in each day and a little consistency, I'll get the similar benefits.
I'm saying if you do it one time, this one meditation, which is a 20-minute meditation, your functional brain MRI would mimic that of a monk. Now, can you hold that? Yes, one time. So
okay, guys, no excuse. 20 minutes. You all got 20 minutes as soon as we're done, or maybe first thing tomorrow morning. I mean, that's
I'll put the link in when we're done chatting, when Dr. Tom goes on to the next person. I'll definitely put the link in. Oh, thanks, Roseanne.
Yeah, Roseanne's got our back.
Thanks, Roseanne. So yeah, so that is one thing. Now, can you hold that space the same way that a monk can hold that functional brain MRI? Probably not. It's going to take a little bit more practice for that. But why do you want your brain to mimic a monk? Well,
Right.
Because that is where we can make better decisions. So studies show that when these parts of our brain light up, we make better decisions. We feel well rested. We can communicate better with people. We're less likely to be reactionary. We're more likely to practice forgiveness. And in our physical body, we're more likely to experience health.
You know, has there been studies on different meditative practices and like physical change and improvements, you know, or even in cancer outcomes or other things that you know?
Yeah, so let's talk specifically about viruses because we're here to talk about immunity and
I
viral
knew you would bring this.
replication. So let's talk specifically about viruses. So the thing about meditation and viral replication, and this has, of course, is like, you know, legal asterisk, this has not been studied with COVID-19 yet, as this is a new virus that we are just now being exposed to. But in the past with other viruses, when we meditate for as little as 5 to 10 minutes a day, what the research shows is that you can have the same viral load, which means that there's viruses floating around in your bloodstream that you've been infected. You can have the same viral load as someone who's exhibiting signs and symptoms of having an infection. So you can have the same viral load as someone who's expressing a fever from a virus, and you will not express the physical signs and symptoms.
Wow.
So
So basically you have it, but you're not getting sick.
exactly. Yep. And you have it at a load high enough to get sick. You should be sick, but you're not. So
I
it's
mean,
one of the things that we can do for protection right now in terms of getting sick. Now, with COVID-19, of course, we're afraid of shedding the virus and not showing signs and symptoms, which is why we're socially distancing right now or physically distancing right now. But if you're worried about getting sick and having an illness, then this is something that can help you.
That's so empowering to me because I've talked to a lot of people. As the new research comes out on like hydroxychloroquine and all these other medicines, you can't find them. We had a bunch of questions at the beginning we didn't get to touch on, but with the masks, but there's serious shortages for healthcare providers, and patients aren't going to be able to get them either. So there's a shortage of toilet paper, but there's really no shortage in time to meditate.
There's no shortage in you closing your eyes and taking a deep breath, setting a timer for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and tapping in, allowing those thoughts to process through your head. It's okay if you can't quiet the mind. That's not what good meditation is. Good meditation is just taking the time to pause and notice what the thoughts are. So if you are somebody who has racing thoughts in your head and you're like, ugh, this isn't even working because I can't stop those thoughts from running through my head. It's okay, right? It's okay. That is part of the meditation journey, and eventually you'll get through those thoughts. If you don't want to observe all those thoughts, then use a guided meditation like the Twin Hearts meditation that I mentioned. If you can't sit still, if that's not part of your patterns of behavior and that's uncomfortable for you, or you have some physical issues with sitting still, then do a walking meditation. You know, there are many resources for how to do a walking mindfulness meditation. And one simple practice for that is to just notice, you just say heel, ball, toe, heel, ball, toe, heel, ball, toe while you're walking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another form of meditation. So these are all different ways to tap into that meditative space to help improve how your immune system is functioning.
Yeah, and I mean, I see a lot of comments about people like how many minutes and meditation, but you know, and also like, is it, you know, and then somebody posts about Tai Chi. I think that the important part for everybody to remember, and you know, love to hear more about your experience, Heather, but is that this is finding the thing that allows you to get into the state of meditation, the state of focus and contemplation, and bringing, you know, that more of a parasympathetic state, or however you want to describe it. Because the problem is we use words to talk and we just screw up the whole thing. The bottom line is find something you like to do that'll get you in that state and just do it. But
yeah, and for me, that's meditation. And I think that with the research being what it is, specifically with the activity of meditation, I would encourage you to try it. You know, to sit down and try it. You don't have to sit on the ground. You don't have to sit cross-legged. You can sit in a chair. You can sit on your couch. You can sit in your bed. You can sit anywhere. But that is where you can get started. And I just want to focus on a couple other things that meditation can do for our immune system. So it can improve our natural killer cell response, which is part of our immune system that helps get rid of viruses and attack viruses. When people who meditate have a viral infection and they are expressing symptoms, they are likely to shorten the duration of the expression of symptoms from 7 days to 3 to 5 days, more on the 3-day side, according to research. So if you're already feeling sick, it's not too late to get started. Start whenever you can get started. And if you're feeling sleep deprived right now, I don't know how many parents are out there, or us entrepreneurs and healthcare providers who are trying to get this information out to as many people as possible, might be a little sleep deprived right now. And the studies show that 10 minutes of meditation and your brain function and your hormones will match that of a non-meditator who slept 8 to 9 hours. So it can also help with sleep deprivation. It improves melatonin production. And the Twin Hearts meditation has been shown to increase melatonin production by 200%. So
What?
200%.
So Elise and I started to talk about melatonin as a powerful antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory, as well as helping us sleep, but we never really got down the rabbit hole. But so many people are like, how do I get my melatonin, up? And I don't want to take the pills or whatever. So, wow, Twin Hearts meditation, 200%, you said?
200%. Yeah, it causes a spike in melatonin by 200%. So this is why I started the Soul of Healing, the Science and Soul of Healing, because I knew that there's a way for us to heal our bodies that didn't rely on nutrition, although nutrition is important. And I'm so glad that you guys talked about that. Doesn't rely on supplements, because guess what? Supplements are sold out right now, the ones that are antiviral. That doesn't rely on medication. And there are these other ways that we can tap into our innate ability to heal within ourselves. That doesn't mean eat a crappy diet. That doesn't mean don't exercise. That doesn't mean don't take medicine. It just means that, sometimes these things aren't available for whatever reason. And in this moment, my normal diet's not available because a lot of the things that I typically eat as a vegetarian is sold out, right? So
Right.
What else can I do? What else can I do when I can't tap into that?
Well, it's interesting. I come from this osteopathic background, and Dr. Still, who was the first osteopath, he said, like, what medicine needs to be is we need to basically put in things that are working, get rid of things that don't make sense, like arsenic and strychnine at the time. But he said that the body, it's interesting. We have all these, everybody hears a lot about cannabinoid receptors and narcotic receptors and opiate receptors, I should say. We have all these receptors, and then we take a pill to stimulate the receptor. The only reason that when we take a pill, it works is because our body can make all these chemicals itself. And I'm so happy that we can have this conversation about how to stimulate your body to make its natural chemicals. Because yes, medicine is important at some times, and especially the more sick you are. I mean, definitely call your doctor, get the right testing, get the medicines, or go to the hospital if you need it. But this is one more piece that you can do, because the reason all the drugs work is you already have a freaking receptor in your body to process your natural chemicals. And that's what Heather's talking about. At least that's what I think you're talking about.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly what I'm talking about. We can improve serotonin production. We can improve melatonin production. We can improve our immune system function. We can shift cortisol production and if we're in an elevated level of cortisol because of stress, we can bring that down through meditation. If we are under producing cortisol, we can support our adrenals the other way through meditation. So there's so many different ways that meditation can be a gateway and unlock the true health of your body. And like I said, this does not replace a healthy diet and physical movement. Actually, these two things go together. As you said, Tom, when you were able to move and do some of the Ashtanga yoga poses, then you were able to still the mind and body enough to meditate. So these things are connected. We can't ignore one without the other. But what I find, at least in American culture, is that we tend to overemphasize that diet and supplements are going to be what creates wellness in our lives. But I just want to let you know that wellness lives within you as well. It's not external to you. You don't have to go to this outside resource. You have the power to heal from within yourself.
And I mean, totally dead on with the way I think too, because what's really interesting to me is we didn't know when I was growing up a lot about diet and the importance of not having the sugar. And I tell people the story a lot. When I started doing the Ashtanga yoga, I really started to get more and more balanced, but I still, even though it was medical school, they weren't teaching me about real nutrition, you know? But what I noticed was the more I practiced the physical activity, which then allowed my mind to calm, and then I became more quote unquote meditative, all of a sudden I wasn't drinking soda anymore. It just stopped. All of a sudden I craved vegetables and I wasn't eating candy, and then pastas went out of my life. It was amazing that when you start to do these simple practices, your body will teach you what it needs. And we all need something slightly different at a different point in our lives. So it just rings so true to me. And someone had asked a question somewhere in here is, how do you teach a teenager to meditate? I don't know if you have any tricks on that one.
First of all, the main way that we influence anybody is through our own actions. So whether it's a teenager, a spouse, a friend, a patient, it is through our own actions. If we are incongruent with what we are suggesting somebody else do, then the likelihood of them taking that suggestion is very low. So if I say, hey, you should eat a meat-based, high-fat, bacon ketogenic diet to my patients, when that's not the way that I personally choose to eat, and then the success rate for that person is going to be lower, right? And if you don't meditate and you're saying to your teenager, you should meditate, that's not going to really go very far. So first and foremost, you meditate, you let them know that you're setting this time aside to meditate, and then you follow through and you do the meditation, and you allow them to see the difference. Because I know that when I first started this journey over 20 years ago, I was doing yoga classes because I was really depressed and I was grieving the death of my father, who died of colon cancer. And when I didn't do my yoga practice, my partner would say, hey, you missed yoga this week. Like, I think you should go to yoga, right? He noticed the difference. He and I have been in life together for 20 years. He's never been to a yoga class, but he noticed that I didn't go to yoga class, right? So that is the most important thing, is set yourself up as the example and take care of yourself. Always invite other people in with you. If you're going to play a guided meditation, then you can invite your teenager or your loved one, your friends. We do group meditations in my practice, and at the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, I host group meditation because it's easiest to learn how to meditate in a group. And there's a lot more energy that comes down, and you're able to like sink into that state of quietness easier when you're in a group. So you can always invite people to a group meditation too, but the most important thing is that you're doing the practice.
I agree. And we're actually doing this at home with Talia, because I see Karen said start them at a young age. And it's like, you know, our daughter is 10 now, and we're all doing 10 to 15 minutes of breath awareness meditation daily right now, because it's just so much more important to do. But another point is I have also asked people to, in the past, is they don't necessarily need to, your kids don't always have to join you, right? But if they see you doing it, offer them the opportunity, like you're saying, Heather, and then don't give them a hard time if they don't participate either, you know, invite them in. And you know, I see Terry said this, and I knew some people would be a little worried. And Susan pointed out that she got a little bit worried about we're all going to get the virus, and now she's feeling much more hopeful thanks to you. You know, one of the things are, you know, we're not sure who's going to get the virus, right? There's tons of people out there getting sick, but we know that, you know, we're saying greater than 80% are mild. The numbers are really more like greater than 90, 95% of people have mild disease. So what is it that that we can really share with people that there is hope in this? I mean, what are you feeling from your end?
Yeah, so as a doctor, I assume that there's lots of viruses I'm going to get in contact with every winter, right? Anybody who's done their first year of residency in a hospital, like it's similar if you've sent your kids to preschool or kindergarten and then all of a sudden like had this year of illness in your home. It's like that with residency in a hospital, but like I think the volume's turned up just like a little bit on how much you feel the infections that first year in the hospital. But I assume I'm getting viral infections and bacterial infections by being exposed to the people that I support in my practice. But I also know this data that if I'm doing my meditation practice and if I'm staying diligent with my meditation practice, I am unlikely to really even know that I have a virus. So that is the most important piece to me, is that if I continue my practices, then I will continue to be physically well and be able to continue on with supporting people in my practice. And that's the most important thing to me. So I hope that brings like a sense of calm or control to your life, because if 90% of us are going to get the virus, do you want to be in the group that gets really ill from it in a controlled kind of study, or do you want to be the group that it has the virus and is less likely to express it? Now, I'm not saying that meditation is a cure-all by any means, but I'm going, just like we are eating the foods that we're going to bet on to help our immunity, and we're taking the supplements that we're going to bet on that are going to help our immunity, I'm doing a daily meditation practice, and I'm going to bet on that to help my immunity.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because as you say that, I just popped in my head what Jill said, because people, have asked about IV vitamin C, and, IV vitamin C can be very potent in viral infections. It's not well studied in COVID-19, like most things aren't. So, but the question is, like Jill said, well, will I be doing all the things at my disposal to stay healthy? And the answer is yes. So it is cutting the sugars out, eating the proper foods, getting the daily exercise, getting some fresh air. And if you can't get outside because of where you live, or I know some people were talking about they live on the coast and like California and everybody's out on the boardwalks, and you may want to separate a little bit, but get some fresh air by opening the windows. But you need to chill out. You need to calm your immune system, and I should say calm your nervous system so that your immune system works better. And I'm doing all of it. I mean, I wake up and I'm doing a meditation before I get out of bed, and I have a meditation in the afternoon with my family, and I'm doing one at bedtime because I'm busy and I'm trying to help. And I also want to model the behavior, but I also know how important it is. So it's just such an important piece of the comprehensive package, because I know that if I get sick, I'm going to continue to meditate. I'm going to continue to eat well. I'm going to continue to do other things. I might add in more supplements. I might add in some IVC. I might add in hyperbarics. I might need to go to the doctor and get a prescription medicine, but I'm not going to stop the foundational stuff. And all this foundational stuff we've been talking about, and what you just said, Heather, these are tools for the rest of our lives. So in kind of wrapping up and closing, I mean, what are the takeaways you want us to really have, and what are the next steps sort of moving forward?
Well, I think I would just summarize in that it doesn't take your entire life to be a good meditator. You can do one 20-minute meditation and mimic the brain of a monk. And as you do that over and over and over again, you can sustain these changes, and that you have power within yourself over illness. You have the tools within your body to heal if you contract an illness, and you can get through this. You've been through other difficult times. You can tap into that and look at the strategies that you used in those other difficult times. You can get through this. I can get through this. We as a community can get through this, and we're here for each other, and we love each other. And through that, we will experience health.
Oh, so well said, Heather. Thank you so much. I want to highlight one comment from Elizabeth. It's just like she said, love her joy. It is such a joy to talk to you. And I feel, it's just always, I feel uplifted every time we talk. So thanks so much for making the time to be part of this. And I know we'll be doing a lot of this soon. Again, everybody check out soulofhealing.com for some more free resources that Heather has for you. And also, it's drheatherpaulson.com. We'll make sure we send out all the links afterwards. Everybody's going to get a replay. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.
So everyone, we are going to have a little special guest here. Not little, but meaning I added in a short 15-minute block here. We have a good friend of mine, Kasha Kynes, who is a doctor of clinical nutrition, and she actually founded the Global EBV Institute, and EBV stands for Epstein-Barr virus. And so she's an expert in the treatment of acute and chronic Epstein-Barr. And so I figured it'd be a nice little surprise at the end here to just give us a little bit of extra information about how to treat these viral illness, other viral illnesses, and see what we can learn. So Kasha, it looks like you're in with us, and
Yes.
how are things going?
So
Hey.
yes, I need this. I need this for better quality. Hold on a second. Can you hear
Perfect.
me?
Yeah, and as you're getting
Okay.
that ready, I just wanted to touch on one piece. Someone had asked about the Tylenol and the ibuprofen thing to clarify what Dr. Elisa was saying, and we were talking about. And Tylenol can affect the liver and decrease glutathione levels. So we were saying maybe we don't need to do that. And also from an ibuprofen perspective, a lot of our children with autoimmune encephalitis actually do need the benefits and its immune modulatory effects. So the thing is, you should really be talking to your doctor about it. The people we're most worried about maybe making things worse are going to be the people in the hospitalized setting. So let your doctor help you make that decision. But there are mixed studies on ibuprofen. Some say it shortens the viral experience and symptoms, and some say it might make it a little worse. So most of this is in mice. It's not really clear. So again, don't be running away from things just because we're afraid. But the thing that's really important about what Elisa said, and it'll dovetail into what we're talking with Dr. Kasha about, is there are natural ways to boost up glutathione. There are supplemental ways to use it. And we're really, those are really critical pieces. So Kasha, what is going on? What do you think we should be doing? What are your kind of top tips and things you need us to know about based on all the stuff we've been talking about?
Oh, I loved everything. I have notes, and so I can contribute here and there based on all our wonderful speakers. So everybody can hear me with my earpiece on?
Yep,
Okay,
sounds
perfect.
good.
So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to actually pull our arms forward and stretch them up and breathe in. And then breathe out through your mouth. And just make a big, big, big circle with those arms and forearms, because we've been sitting and maybe standing, hopefully, and listening all these hours. So I want to touch upon the meditation and the melatonin that you just discussed with Dr. Heather, because, and this will bring this stress response also home. Did you know that women lose their serotonin faster because of stress? Men are just wired differently. So when we are more in stress, we lose serotonin faster and more. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that makes the brain happy. So our mood is better. So if people are on medication like Prozac, that's a serotonin uptake inhibitor. So it keeps serotonin longer. But what we may not appreciate is that serotonin is the building block to melatonin. Melatonin is the one that makes us sleepy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my mother is a retired nurse back in Poland, I'm from Poland. She still does that. Every time there is sun, whether it's February, March, she will open the window and bundle up and stick her face in the sun. And the very cool thing is right now, there's this sun exercise that I learned about. If you have a hard time relaxing and sleeping right now, if your stress hormone, cortisol is messing up with melatonin, so you're up and wired tired at night because you're worried, just around noon, if you can stick your face with your eyes closed, you're going to hit the sun will hit the pineal gland and will help kind of reset the cortisol and melatonin because they're opposite. One is high, one is low. So anyway, that just came to me like instantly, something simple we can do at home without
Nice.
touching anyone. And so it really works wonderfully. And I know that some viruses, we had some pandemics, maybe decades ago, or 100 years ago, when the sun exposure really was instrumental in, I think it was with flu pandemic at one point, when the doctors were removing the beds and putting them outside in the sun. Of course, it's cold, but like I say, if you have any sun at all, just wrap yourself around. It may not be the right angle for vitamin D because the sun is, it's not summer, but the pineal gland in your brain will actually respond and help you maybe sleep. So
Yeah.
hopefully that will help.
It's perfect. And Kasia, it sounds like your mic is a little low, but it's fine if you speak up a smidge. I mean, because I can hear you pretty decent.
Speak a little
Oh, there
bit
you go.
Okay.
Yep. And then just a hair slower.
A little slower.
You got, oh, that's perfect.
We are in the middle of nowhere. We just moved to San Juan Island. And so I was just hoping that I will not be cut out. So
it sounds great. So what are you kind of telling people though? Because I mean, you're like the guru of turning off Epstein-Barr virus. Are there things that are similar between these herpes viruses that cause Epstein-Barr and this novel coronavirus, and tricks that we can kind of implement at home to help now?
Yes. So I'm going to focus on very, very simple things. Big picture, because this is where stranded at home, like Dr. Heather was saying, things are not available, supplements may not be available, but we are at home and we can think and we can make choices. So first of all, viruses don't like antioxidants, and Dr. Eliza was talking about that as well. With the EBV in particular, this is your biggest hitter against them. And so I totally agree with all, taking the crap out, taking the soda out,
right,
taking the sugar out. I would not personally be afraid of fruits, especially when they're organic, because it's a very different type of sugar. And one of the things that also Dr. Wallace mentioned was T regulatory cells. She was talking about sauerkraut salad, and I have a fabulous recipe that is so delicious. So I need to get that recipe to everyone. I think I'll post it like straight on our resource page for the coronavirus.
Perfect.
Even if you don't like sauerkraut, I think you'll love that. It has apples, onion, olive oil, carrots, and the sauerkraut. So we have a lot of agents that are antiviral in it too. But she talked about T regulatory cells, and I can't stress it enough. T cells are fed short-chain fatty acids, and these are made by a good bacteria. Your good bacteria eat your fiber. In order to feed your good bacteria, your naturally existing bacteria, and she talked about gut, the immune system in the gut that they feed, they need lunch, dinner, your breakfast. They need fiber, and fiber is in plants. Plant matters. So the more of those plants, and I don't distinguish so much between, just do vegetables and no starchy vegetables, just, and not many fruits. This is all fiber. And starchy vegetables have resistant starch too. So it's a good glucose, slow glucose. It's going to feed your brain. But all these have antioxidants, so I can't stress it enough. And so I retrain people to have, one of the things you discussed is intermittent fasting. What do we do with that? And we talked about, I have benefit of everybody talking before. We talked about routine, creating routines emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I need you to do a routine for your foods too. So your brain is on a routine with glucose. Everybody inside your all your cells are fed at regular times. And the most importantly, Do not skip breakfast because you're breaking fast. You have absolutely no gasoline. You have nothing to support your cells, no antioxidants, nothing. So do not skip breakfast no matter what. You've been fasting 8 hours. Lunch should be between noon and 1:30. That's it. You can get heartburn from the same lunch at 3 p.m. This is when the body is designed, 12 to 1:30, to have a solid big meal. This can really break or make the rest of your day. So this will really create that resilience we're talking about. I think I'm gonna call it hostess with the mostest. The worst host for viral infections of any time, or bacterial infections of any time. And then the dinner, you know, then you have kind of fasting between meals. If you're healthy, you don't need snacks. But if you really compromise, you have chronic stress, and actually a little bit of fresh fruit may actually help your adrenals as well. So make sure you have fiber in your diet, which is RAFH, which is gluten-free grains if you can cook them at home. Your legumes and split pea soup, these are cheap things, you know. Brown rice, black beans, just throw it in.
Right.
Look in your pantry, so you have dry beans, literally. If you have to do canned beans, you know, this is where we are right now. So I'm looking through my pantry too, but get those Tregs to be fed, because your good bacteria are munching on the fiber, they're pooping the short-chain fatty acid. It goes into the colon, and it also goes through into your blood and feeds your Tregs. And the Tregs can stimulate your bad guys too, and turn down that inflammation and autoimmune pathways. Go ahead.
Right. So kind of what you're saying is you're seeing that the response, the improvement from say Epstein-Barr virus, and a lot of this is actually happening in response to doing these simple things but on a routine. And so are a lot of the folks you're working with actually getting better without needing some of these other sort of supplements or other medications?
Well, unfortunately, by the time people come to our programs or to my clinic, they have severe chronic EBV oftentimes, and so we have to go into heavy duty protocols, which are acute versions of supplemental protocols. We have to do that. Otherwise, it's just the virus is deep embedded, and you have to just take that shortcut. But I can tell you that all of us can. There's this entity called NF-kappa B that increases inflammation, and some of the viruses actually, like EBV, hijacks it, and a lot of viruses actually thrive if that increases. And we've been talking about the diet, and there was a study on NF-kappa B. One hash brown McDonald's meal, I think it was, in the study, increased NF-kappa B 150% for 2 hours. And so we have plethora of NF-kappa B down-regulating foods and agents, and green tea, pomegranates, turmeric. I mean, the list is long. Natural things that calm inflammation. We have it in the pantry.
And so but you alluded to the chronic people often need a lot of stuff, but you said they kind of get to you in that bad state. It sounds like you're alluding to the things that you're suggesting we do and everyone else has talked about could have prevented them in a more acute state from developing a chronic illness. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, because it's like, you know, it's like the tipping point, the last straw. So to zoom out again, we are deficient, and the studies are old. I mean, the studies are, I put quite a lot of studies in my book. They're all over the map. We are deficient in simple things like vitamin C, which is a great antiviral. Mm-hmm. We are already deficient, and that's been shown in a study 2002, 2003, a long time ago. And then you look at the produce and the decrease in nutrient density in produce between 1950s and then even 1970s already. The same things are depleted: antioxidants, polyphenols, vitamin C, vitamin E, magnesium, and protein level in produce. So the soil is depleted. We're eating and we're not getting it. And then there's studies on organic farming versus commercial farming. there's a significant decrease in the difference in these antioxidants
Right.
again,
So
and main nutrients between those two practices. So it's like we have choices that we can make, right now. Better
great.
quality food.
So Tony had a
Yes.
question about taking extra vitamin C if you're already doing all the good stuff like eating the greens and the veggies. So let's say you have a diet like Dr. Walls suggested, higher in some of these, high in C, you're getting a well-rounded diet. Would you say as an acute viral prevention, we need to use additional C, or is really having a good well-rounded diet going to be enough at this point?
Great question. It depends what we know about which foods have vitamin C, because you see, we are some of the few species that do not produce vitamin C. We have to get externally. But you may not know that if you actually cook potatoes with the skins on, there is massive amount of vitamin C right there. Don't peel that skin off. Get organic potatoes.
Nice.
Bell peppers, red bell peppers have a lot of vitamin C. That broccoli has vitamin C. We only think citrus, but it may not be. Like, it depends on how stressed the system is, and
Okay.
it depends on the season. This is the end of winter. We are naturally just exhausted. And so I would say vitamin C is so vital, and we don't get enough. I wouldn't say we get enough in diet at all. So that would be a simple thing to add, even just one capsule a day, just add it.
Yeah. Well, Kasia, thanks so much for making the time to jump in with us on the last minute. And everybody, Kasia is like, I want to help any way I can. What is in closing, is there any specific takeaway everybody should, if they were to do one thing starting tonight or tomorrow morning that you would really recommend?
Okay, so I'll recommend two things. Number one is I'm taking a lot of videos and pictures of simple things I do in my pantry, not perfect, just simple. And we're putting together a free program for anyone, just to show that you can manage it, whether it's canned soups or so. So we're putting it together on my website. So that's coming in a few days. But one of the things also that I want to add is, and that's what I teach my patients, is joy. So for people that can find it really hard to really settle down into meditation, even 5 minutes, one of the things that opens the healing, even on a cellular level, is joy. And one of the physicality of joy is music. So if you can find music right now that you absolutely adore, when you turn it on, you just stand up and dance, do it. That physicality and the fun and that woohoo, that actually is what we want. And that's, my husband has this 1970s San Francisco music.
Nice.
And it's just fun. So you really have to turn off that stress response. It's like being pregnant. You're in stress response or you're out of it. And breathing stops it. Just a couple of deep breaths. So if you can catch yourself being stressed out, open your mouth, breathe, and then slowly breathe out. We have all kinds of tools that we've discussed before. Zap that, but it's hard. Just keep that music on and do a little bit of wiggle, move your hips, stretch your arms, dance and sing. That will turn off that stress response. And I can tell you, with my perspective with Epstein-Barr virus, stress in studies and my clinical experience is the number one triggering factor of the EBV infection, at least. So
awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Kynes. And
My
thank you
pleasure.
to everyone else. We had a couple of questions that folks wanted me to kind of finish up with. And I want to wrap up a little bit. There's so many resources out there. We will be sending you a link for the replay in a day or two, maybe even sooner, as soon as we can get it processed. I'm also going to be collecting all of our panelists' information so that they can share this with you. Other things are, our coronavirus resource page is originsofhealth.com/coronavirus. I keep updating it as best I can, but we're going to be sharing with you all the information. Someone had asked about masks and bandanas and stuff, and I said I would try to come back to it. One of the things that we know is that the virus is really small. So a lot of the masks that are out there don't really stop the virus from coming into you. And the medical mask is called an N95 mask, and it's pretty good, but it's not even small enough. But we're in short demand in the medical society system because there's so much demand at the moment. And so we really, in order for that to work, we need to have the mask fit properly. And that's a big process. But the question about whether I should wear a surgical mask or whether I should wear a bandana or something of that nature, that really is most likely only going to help if you're actually sick and you're coughing. That will help you not give it to someone else. It's not necessarily going to give you any additional protection. So it's important, and we don't want to give ourselves a false sense of protection. Now, as someone mentioned earlier, if you're riding your bike on the coast and you're not coming by a lot of people, but every once in a while you go past somebody, maybe that might be a time to utilize something like your bandana for a little extra protection. But the bottom line is the bandanas and the surgical masks are really out there to help other people, not necessarily you. And it's great because we are in a time where we're actually helping other people by doing the physical distancing, by wearing the mask if we have a cough. And it's just such an important thing. And I'm just so blessed to have been here with all of you and with all the other panelists. And so for me, it's about family. And I've one last special guest who's going to be with us just for a couple moments as we wrap things up. And Artie, I'm going to introduce our special guest real quickly, and we'll talk to her. And then I want to go back to that. How long? We'll close off with how long does the virus live? I actually want to make a note here in our bodies and what to do from there. So, Talia, are you on?
Yeah.
Hi. Hey,
Hi.
everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Talia. This is my daughter. And she kind of got this whole thing started by telling us that we need to remain calm and keep our brains from going crazy. So how's this whole thing been for you, honey?
I think it's been good.
Yeah, well, what's been good? I mean, it's so scary outside. What's made it good for you, and how have you gone through it all?
Spending time with my family more and feeling a lot more clean because I've been cleaning the house a lot more.
Feels good when things are clean like that. I know you changed your room around. What have you been doing to keep busy? Have you had any special projects?
Well, my dad did say to do a report, and I did do it and it was on Stitch Fix, and I'm almost done with it. And
Right.
I think that's it.
Well, and I know that you have a lot of school stuff coming up tomorrow because they've been very proactive, but I think I'm very proud of you for what you did with the Stitch Fix, because we kind of blended a little bit of television, we blended a little bit of internet learning, and then you got to do a fashion show.
Yeah, that was fun.
So I want to say thanks for joining us, because everyone's been here with us for hours. One last thing, what do you want everybody to know about this whole thing? How can they stay as healthy as possible during this, virus problem?
Well, just keep calm and do like the essential things, like wash your hands after like opening stuff, and wash your hands before you eat and after you eat. And if you touch say if you touch like a lizard or something, then you should probably wash your hands after that.
So good. Thanks so much for joining us, Talia. Thanks for also motivating me and supporting me through this whole time. And I'm so glad that we're all together. And I know that everybody here is so excited to hear from you and also, be able to spend time with their families. So we'll talk to you soon, honey. So everyone, thanks again for joining us. I wanted to kind of talk about what we do know about the virus in closing and what we don't know. And so like Talia said, it's interesting. We know that respiratory droplets are what is the primary mode of transmission. So when we do cough, when we get that liquid on our hands, that's the piece. And so I noticed somebody had mentioned that some of the docs are saying that the surgical mask may not protect others. And certainly the surgical mask is way too big, the holes in it, to actually stop all the virus. But if we're hawking loogies, it can help. None of this stuff is perfect. What we do know, though, that's been emerging is that if we get those droplets on tables or other places, like I said earlier, copper and zinc, 3 to 4 hours, cardboard, even 24 hours. So if we're getting a lot of these Amazon shipments and other shipments, we may really want to, once we put them in a specific area, open them up, and then before we go inside, wash our hands, then take everything out, unpackage it. And again, like Talia was saying, wash your hands a little bit more and just be safe with everything that's happening. So to the question of how long does the virus last, inside of a person, we're not really sure. But what we do know is that somewhere between 80 to 90% of people are having mild disease. And what that means is your symptoms aren't all that bad. And those people are typically getting sick for 1 to 2 weeks, and then they're recovering. And the people who are more severely ill are usually sick for 3 to 6 weeks, in that range. And certainly there's a variety of things happening. One of the things to understand, though, is we often are saying, we started out by saying, once you're no longer sick, then, with symptoms of the COVID-19, now we can move on and we can just go back out to our daily life, which right now is kind of restricted. But what we're seeing is that there can be asymptomatic viral shed, or meaning the people who were sick, now they don't have any more symptoms. They can actually feel they can actually make people shed virus and potentially infect someone else for 1 to 4 weeks later. Now, this is very preliminary research, but it's important to understand that this is changing every day. And so we have to stay tuned to kind of find out, where it's all going to be. The other part I want to make sure we talked about is our children. I know we talked with Dr. Song about this, but it's super important to understand that despite our children being healthy and some of our younger population healthy, and actually most of us, 90% of us will have mild symptoms, we do have 2 things going on. Like I had just mentioned, the asymptomatic viral shed. You can actually not show symptoms of the infection, and you can spread it to someone else. The other thing is there's a period of time of incubation for the virus, which on average, after you're exposed to the virus, it'll take about 5 to 7 days for you to get sick. But we've seen estimates as little as 2 days on the short end and 14 days on the long end for people, being coming down with this infection. In that 2 to 14 days where you don't have symptoms, you could give this to others. This is a place where it's so important to understand that the physical distancing for the time being is so important. If we look at China, we look at Italy, they didn't act quickly enough. And I'll admit, like in Italy, I feel really bad because they have a much older population. They're the second oldest population in the world. There's a lot of smoking, and they didn't have other people to look at and see what was really going right or wrong with what other governments did. So they unfortunately got hit early, and similar with Iran and other places. But if you look at Taiwan, they very quickly saw the problem. They were very rapid to do testing, public awareness. They were very open to all of the, sharing information with the public, very transparent. They started to stop the export of surgical masks. They really mobilized early. And if you look at places even like Germany, Germany has a ton of cases right now of COVID-19, but their mortality rate is super low. And one of the reasons where they started seeing people coming back from ski trips who were young, who had gotten it outside of, Germany, and they very quickly closed down, a lot of the travel. They did contact tracing, meaning anybody who came in contact with that sick person was identified, and we tracked where they were, and we quarantined them to stop the spread. Unfortunately, in the United States and some of the other countries that are more hard hit, this didn't happen. We took too much time. So the horse is out of the barn right now. And in a lot of places, I would love to have never had this conversation in my whole life. We really don't want to be quarantining and isolating people. the impacts on our mental health, our physical health, our financial health, and the economics of the planet are so I mean, it's all up in the air right now, but this is a time where we have to understand this physical distancing is, unfortunately, at least where I'm at in the United States, it's mandatory. We have to take these steps. But the other part is, it doesn't mean we don't have hope. We really are in an amazing place, because while we have to physically distance, socially we can connect. So many people are doing online yoga, meditation, any kind of exercise program. I mean, I was going to start listing people, but the list is so long. So I will be sending out the replay link. I will be sending out a list of all of our panelists and how to get in touch with them and some of the highlights of their resources. I'm going to continue to update originsofhealth.com/coronavirus. It sounds like we have a reason to do this again, and I'll let all of you know if we do. We just want to be a resource. If there are burning questions you need to know, certainly send us an email. One of the easiest things to do is to send an email, or I should say, is to go to Origins of Health on Facebook and just drop the comment there. That's a good one. And certainly otherwise, if you send a message to tom@originsofhealth.com, we may not be able to answer everybody's individual question, but I really want to make sure that we're able to get the big questions answered for people. There's so much amazing information out there, but the thing I want to leave you with is, and I will be sending also, before I forget, I want to let you know that I will be sending everybody a copy of my coronavirus cheat sheet, if it's not already coming to you. I can't remember if we did that. We did this so quickly. And the other one is Relax and Reboot. It's a quick, short ebook I wrote about how to calm your nervous system and boost your immune system. There's 3 simple exercises. You can do them for 5 or 10 minutes a day, and they're super effective. And so I just want you guys all to have that, because it's so important in this time. And the most important thing to do, I can leave you with, is there's a ton of hope. The planet is coming together in a way that we've never seen before. But what we really know is that if you find one thing that's super cool in your life that you really love to do, and just start doing it a little bit more today, that will compound, and your immune system will be boosted naturally. Your stress levels will come down. And so really use this as a time to come together. Thanks everyone so much. I mean, this is so amazing. I'm so grateful for you all to be here. And I'm so super grateful. Out of the corner of my eye, seeing all these thank yous and these words of gratitude. Now let's all go and pay this forward. Let's share. We can share the links to the replay of this with friends. We can share one thing we learned with as many people as we know, so that we can just pay it forward and we can help the planet. Thanks everyone for joining us. We're also honored to be with you. And until next time, stay healthy and happy, and enjoy all your time with yourselves and your family. Take care.
For all you do, Dr. Tom.